Good evening. Noting the time and the presence of a quorum, I'd like to bring this May 8th, 2023 meeting of the Acton Select Board to order. Please note that under 940 CMR 29.10 Section 5, Alyssa Nickel will be participating remotely during the meeting due to a personal illness or injury. She will be participating via video conference. Please note that a quorum is physically present. A roll call vote is required for any and all votes involving members participating remotely. We'll open with resident concerns.
Hello, Tara Frederickson with Acton. I have a question more than a concern. A person was asking me why I was talking about a special town meeting, and I was telling him that special town meeting is for the citizens if they don't like what the town is doing and want to have a special town meeting to make decisions, then anybody can get signatures and have a special town meeting. So he's very upset about outside his house on 111. There's a lot of speeding that goes on. And he remarked that the Pope Road and all kinds of other smaller streets that have less traffic are getting one of those blinky signs, 30, 30, 30. And I guess those work really well. And so he would like to get one on Mass Ave by Sawyer Automotive so that people will slow down because the village is coming. So the question is what is the process by which someone can get that done within the budget without a special town meeting, because he's intent on having a special town meeting if he doesn't get his blinky sign. So, and I know I'll end up getting signatures and I don't want to have to. So I would like very much, because I'm working on library stuff. So the question is, what is the first step? I've never gone through that process before.
Well, I think the first, and I'll defer to the manager in a second, but I think the first issue we need to determine is whether that section of Mass Ave is under state jurisdiction or town jurisdiction.
Okay, so where it begins and ends.
So that's the first question. And as far, if it were a town road, in that section, I'll defer to the town manager as to how they choose those locations.
Thank you. So that what you're discussing is a rapid flashing beacon or a speed radar feedback sign. Those are two examples of measures that we implement throughout the community for traffic calming. We do annual appropriations from town meeting for traffic calming measures, and those are prioritized based on feedback we get from the public. The Transportation Advisory Committee has a large role in providing feedback, and the Select Board. There are several that we've put in the last 5 years, and we try to put them in places strategically located to have an impact. We also have a way to install a bracket where we can rotate. We have several that we rotate through town, and that could be a location that we added to the rotation without a major expense. So it's something that certainly if a resident that you're familiar with has a concern, they should reach out to my office or the Public Works office, and we can add it to the list of ones that we're considering, but I haven't received that as of yet.
Thank you. That's just a follow-up. It's not me, and the person that is having this difficulty does not have the capacity to do that work, so it looks like it's going to fall on me. So the first step would be to reach out to you, John, or to the TAC, Transportation Advisory Committee. What advice would you give?
I'd say forward your request through the town manager.
Town manager. Okay, thank you so much.
Good evening.
Go ahead.
My name is Liz Reinhardt. I'm a member of the Nagog Woods Community Corporation Board of Directors. I'm also a resident of the Village of Nagog Woods. I'm here in connection with the special permit site plan application 1 and 5 Nagog Park and 599 Great Road. I'm aware that the hearing has been continued, and so what I'd like to just do this evening is take advantage of being here and file with you a petition with 80 signatures in opposition to the plan as proposed, and also confirm that the town has received a letter filed by the Nagog Woods Community Corporation in connection with this matter.
Yes, certainly. It's not our intent to take extensive public comment about something that's not being heard today, but certainly if you want to present the petition, that would be
Thank you.
fine.
We're reserving comment till the continuation date.
Thank
of the
you.
hearing. Thanks.
Steve Noon, also a member of the Nagog Woods Community Corporation Board, but I'm talking here about something else. I'm talking on behalf of the FinCom on the Middlesex COLA adjustment. John Mangiarotti and I have exchanged some emails on this. At our last meeting, the Finance Committee voted not to recommend it to you. We have not met since. Since that time, I've learned it's not a lot of money, but it does have an impact on the Middlesex pension. It delays, puts off the fully funded period by at least 1 year. Middlesex is maybe 56% funded as a pension plan, and even a delay of 1 year is a risk. The other thing we should be aware of is, though only the Select Board has a say in this, the school district, the Acton Housing Authority, and Acton Water District also have participants in this plan. So that I have made at least the school district aware of it. I haven't made any of the other bodies aware of what's going on. So I know the school district is planning on the fully funded date for Middlesex to allow them to then turn that money over into funding their OPEB liability. So even a year delay, and my experience over the years with Middlesex is they don't always tell you exactly what's going to happen. So a year could turn into 2 or 3. So I think we stand by our recommendation not to recommend. Thank you.
Thank you.
Miles Fidelman, also from Nagog Woods and on the Association 3 board. Speaking for myself, however, this is about the McGovern Auto Dealership and the process. And just a comment that the process seems to be broken. McGovern is applying for a permit for a substantive change of use to something that was planned years ago, and in the absence of any master planning since then, should be denied on the face of it. And certainly, as I read the special permit ordinance, it is biased against approving substantive changes of use. There's lots of qualitative statements in the ordinance that go beyond simply you go through the hoops, you fill in all the forms, and you get approved. If anything, it seems like it's biased to deny. And just like to get that on the record, and that there are quite a few people, particularly abutters, who adamantly would like to see that denied. And just beyond that, it would be very nice to see some updates to the Nagog Park shopping complex along the lines of the West Acton redevelopment. And if somebody wanted to propose a low-profile auto dealership as part of a renovation of what is a community center, that's a whole other story. But that's not what's being proposed.
Thank you.
Hello, John Perkins, 9 School Street. And I was just wanted to ask a question about the Civil Defense Building, and to wonder if the board can put this back up for RFP again by itself.
I think it's not on the agenda for consideration tonight, but I think that it's, John, when were we planning on getting back together to talk about a way forward on School Street?
As soon as the board's ready. I think the property that we're discussing was included in a potential sale of 13 School Street and 3 School Street together. Town meeting did not authorize that to, the 13 School Street article did not pass. It didn't, so we don't have the ability to move forward on that plan. So I would be planning to come back to the board soon to ask what it wanted to do on both of those parcels. I wasn't prepared to do that tonight.
I think, one of our next orders of business coming up later on this evening is to reorganize the board and come up with who's going to be chair, vice chair, and that sort of thing. Once we get the board in place, then we'll have the right players available to set things on the agenda. So I think all other things being equal, I would hope, our meeting later in May or early June, but, at that point, I can't speak for the board.
Okay, thank you.
But thank you for the comment.
Hi, Carla Heiler, 531 Old Stonebrook. This is more of a question for the board. Clearly, the McGovern Auto Group is delaying coming in for their permit, and people are pushing back about them receiving their permit. Is there some way the select board could possibly basically facilitate some sort of negotiation to try to make this process a little bit more transparent and be less contentious?
Well, I think the reason for the most recent delay is McGovern did get substantial input from the community and also from town staff. And I know they're going back and looking at all of their plans. So I think we really need to wait until May 22nd, which is when we'll be continuing the hearing till, and see what's actually there on the plans. Frankly, I expect this is going to be a fairly long process. With multiple
I'm just thinking they
hearings.
have a couple of weeks where if somebody can negotiate or to work with both groups to try to find a solution.
Well, we have to see what they're actually proposing. But,
So does that mean they're altering their proposal?
pardon me?
Does that mean, so they are currently altering the proposal that's on there?
Yes, that's my understanding. There was some pretty substantial comment from town staff.
Yes.
And I know that they did meet with various members of the public.
Mm-hmm.
So they are, it's a necessary continuance so that they'll have time to work through the plans with their engineers and architects. So, what you've seen before is not necessarily what you're going to see on the 22nd.
Okay.
So I would say wait till you see what they bring forward and then see where we go from there. Obviously, I think the select board have probably gotten 50, 60, 70 emails.
Yes.
We certainly hear the feelings amongst the public. And, we're not going to open and close the hearing on May 22nd.
The other question I also had was, just very quickly, is a number of people who live outside of Acton that make use of the businesses there, specifically the Indian supermarket and the restaurants there. We're asking if they can submit comments or not. Would they be considered as they come into Acton to spend their money?
Anybody that would like to send us an email, we're happy to read them.
All right, thank you.
Sue Hart, Charter Road. I will not waste your time. We came with questions that have been answered, but they will be more appropriate for the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Nijan Datar, Wincliffe Drive. I want to get back to Article 13 that was passed, the amendment that was passed in the meeting. One of the gentlemen asked Jim a question that, and you said the original Chapter AC has a clause to develop the regulations in open meeting. But it sounds like the whole thing is backwards. So now, right now, the building commissioner has complete authority over the article, and this goes to the state. They could approve it, let's say tomorrow, next week, and then in 3 months the article goes into effect. and there's going to be no open meetings or no regulations. It's an open-ended thing. And so the definition of infeasibility and impracticality, which you said will be developed later, seems like it should have been developed before everything was done. So now I can see a situation where the state approves it soon, 3 months it goes into effect, somebody wants to build a house, et cetera, is not allowed to use fossil fuels and things like that, but the building commissioner has no guidance on how to approve the permit. I mean, he has full discretion. So it sounds like the process, again, was not done in the right way, so this is citizens' concern, so I don't know that you can answer the question, but how fast will those regulations be developed so that the building commissioner has guidance? And that was...
Thanks for the question. The time for us to develop the regulations is now, over the next few months, before the earliest the bylaw could possibly take into effect. So you should see this coming to select board agenda or agendas sometime between now and the end of the year.
End of the year, which is 8 months, though.
Yeah.
But it could be approved soon.
No, the DOER has said that they're not approving until November.
Okay, so we have until February then. Okay, thank you.
Yes, Linda Onescu, 161 Split Rock, Nagog Woods. I'm here basically around the Nagog issue and the letter I forwarded today, which brought up, I think Article 13 is likely to impact what is constructed by the McGovern Group, I would think, if things go along this way. One thing I thought I'd mention while I was here, when I watch these meetings at home, they're hard to watch because the sound, there's an interference on it, which I watch other towns, and it's clear as a bell, and I have good hearing, but there's some white noise it's picking up, and it's very difficult to continue listening to because I'm wondering if you were aware of that and if there's any way to impact that in this town that is very technologically sophisticated. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm personally very aware of the acoustic problems in this room. And I did have a conversation with the folks from Acton Community TV, and I understand there's going to be some upgrades brought into this room probably this summer to attempt to improve the situation. They think they were ready to do it earlier, but we got caught up with town meeting. But I believe that there are some improvements on the horizon. And yes, I agree. It's difficult to watch.
I am Chris Strangio and own 40 and 42 Nagog Park. It is my understanding that the property on which the mall currently sits has been sold and purchased by a firm that intends to demolish the mall and replace it with an auto dealership. Is that substantially correct? Okay. I'm here to comment on that. As a building owner, I have tenants that value the amenities offered by the mall, particularly the restaurants. In addition, there's the dollar store, the Indian restaurant, Indian grocery store, Chinese restaurant, the gym. All of these things are going to disappear, if I'm understanding this correctly. That's a loss not only to my tenants, but to all of the tenants in the buildings, in the commercial buildings, further down Nagog Park. Beyond that, there are many Indian couples that live in Avalon and Nagog Woods that rely on the Indian grocery store there. That's going to be gone too. Now, I understand that certainly it is the right of the previous owner of the mall to sell it, and certainly the right of another firm to buy it. But what is being proposed is going to be a substantial loss for everybody who lives and works in that area. And there's no real gain by having another auto dealership. We have so many in Acton already. I don't know that there's anything that can be done about that, and my purpose here is just to make you aware, if you haven't already been made aware, of the losses that we're going to suffer if this goes through. So that's really all I have to say.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
That hearing is going to be continued until May 22nd. The applicant will be coming in with the revised plans. I certainly haven't seen them. They're still being developed. But I fully expect that we'll be talking about this through a good part of the summer. Okay. Manager's update.
I'm not doing. Part of the audio feedback is the microphones that we need to, as they say in the show business, eat the mic, and we need to make sure all the other ones are turned off. So I just wanted to mention that the Municipal Monthly we published for May might be a record setter. It's 25 pages, so hopefully you have time to look through it, and when you do, you'll find out all kinds of exciting things that are happening in Acton this month. Thank you to all the town staff and volunteers and officials who helped coordinate and orchestrate a very successful town meeting. We had 556 people there the first night and 383 people there the second night, which went into the morning, which was fun. The meeting is recorded and you can watch it on ActonTV if you're interested. We also have a summary of the articles and what happened on each one posted on our website, and there'll be a more comprehensive abstract published by the town clerk's office, hopefully by the end of the week. At town meeting, I was pleased to revisit the tradition of presenting the Joseph A. Lally Merit Awards. This year, it was to Mary Cadis as Municipal Employee of the Year, and Josh Ramos as the Public Safety Employee of the Year. And it's great to honor their service. Earlier, at the end of last month, I attended the Colonel Francis Faulkner Senior Award for Exemplary Volunteer Service at a reception next door at the library, where the Select Board honored each of its honorees in a very nice ceremony. I wanted to make sure that people noticed the new signs out on the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. This is a collaborative effort between many town staff and actually our neighbors in Concord to create wayfinding on the rail trail so that all of the users of the rail trail, instead of just flying by, notice some of the great cultural and business institutions that we have here in town and go to them. Also a note that Phase 2B, which starts at right about Teamworks and goes over the bridge, is going to be closed tomorrow. So don't go there tomorrow. They're paving it, which is very exciting. But if you go there, it'll mess up the paving. So, and it should be back in business Wednesday, and we'll have a nice way to get across the bridge and really a nice extension to the rail trail. Just a note that we continue to have transitions here in town staff. We said farewell to Austin Saganowitz. He's now the town administrator in Rutland, so congrats to him. We're still working on the hiring a permanent police chief. That process is ongoing. We have an assessment center scheduled for later this month. And also, we recently welcomed our new building commissioner, and he's here tonight. I wanted to welcome Ed Mullen to come up and say hello. Ed was formerly the Director of Land Use and Buildings and Building Commissioner for the town of Littleton. He also spent some time in building departments in Amesbury and Concord. He started a few weeks ago and he's already off and running, and he brought a special skill of helping us get our online permitting system up and running. And so we have high expectations that that'll happen soon.
Start over. Thank you very much, Ed Mullen, your new building commissioner. It's a pleasure to be before this honorable body. A note that May is Building Safety Month, and I had brought forward a proclamation to the town manager. He brought it before you guys tonight. I think it's one of the agenda items a little further down tonight, so I'll be around for that presentation. I'm happy to be here. I have a long history as a builder also. I don't know if you're familiar with a wonderful establishment here in town, True West Brewery. Before I jumped over the counter and became a building official, I was a contractor, and that was the last project that I actually built before I became a building official. So if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them. I know that there was mention of Article 13, Article 12 as well, and I have started the conversation with staff in my department as well as the Land Use and Planning Department. We are coming up with some things. We certainly look forward to feedback from you folks and the public as well. So it's going to be a invigorating conversation, I'm sure. So, any questions?
Okay. Questions for Mr. Mullen from any members of the board?
Thank you very much.
Welcome aboard.
Just a note, I thought that the consent agenda item would be covered and Ed didn't have to stay. So if that's I'll call you if there's an issue.
Terrific.
Go home and get
I
your rest.
appreciate that. Thank you, folks. Have a wonderful night.
Okay. Member updates? Jim?
A couple little things. So it's May, which means that garlic mustard has started showing its little white flowers. So garlic mustard is one of our invasive plants, which is a plant that's brought across ecosystem boundaries by humans, and in this case, outcompetes the plants that are already here. So you'll see it in big monocultures at the edges of conservation lands. So we've been having about 10 years of picking, and if that would interest anybody in the audience or any of my fellow board members, I'm very happy to get you set up with all the right equipment, which is, you have to have fingers pretty much. You just pull this stuff out. It's very easy. And looking forward to making progress on getting rid of this invasive. The other thing is just about town meeting and follow-up. I want to thank John and the whole staff for, all that incredible work that went into town meeting. We're the little frosting on the cake. We get to do we get to present things, and that's fun. But I know all the back end work was considerable. So thank you. Another thing about town meeting. Last year, a few months after town meeting, we spent some time to debrief town meeting and kind of understand, which of the articles should be followed up on and how and with what priority. I'm going to recommend to the agenda setters, whoever those end up being, that we do that process very early on this year, because it might inform what we want to set for goals. So expect that to be coming.
Thank you. Other member comments? Alyssa, you have a comment?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. It was suggested to me that I use my very first member minute to introduce myself to the board and to the public, maybe share some particular interests. And I don't actually have particular interests. I am a generalist and really interested in deepening my knowledge and understanding of all of the issues. I suppose I could sum up that interest with being interested in the well-being of the community. And I was not expecting my first select board meeting to be Zooming in, but I have COVID, so I am not sharing that with all of you. I apologize if I sat near you in town meeting. Hopefully you will stay well. I just wanted to invite everyone who did not follow my campaign to visit my website, which will stay up for the duration of my term. It's alyssaforacton.org. You can reach me by clicking on my name on the select board page of the town website. And I am anxious to hear from everybody via email. We can set up a time to meet in person or on the phone or video call. And I also wanted to make a note. Town manager mentioned the municipal monthly, and I thought maybe some folks do not know how to access that. If you go to the town website, the menu items up at the top includes services. So if you click on services, you'll find town notifications, and there you can sign up for general updates. And the municipal monthly and town news flashes are a really great way to learn about what's going on in town.
Okay, thank you. Get better. So the only update I have that I'd offer is a reminder that the 250 committee is still working on that logo contest. Got another couple of weeks to receive submissions. Just go to the town website, and it's prominently located there with all the information for the logo contest. And that's it for me. Sue.
One quick question for Jim. I did not get the name of the plant that you said was invasive.
Garlic mustard. Garlic mustard. Well, it shoots straight up in May. Has little white flowers on it, very tiny petals. It's in the mustard family, which always has those little five petals. Okay. Yep.
Okay. Public hearing. The Acton Select Board will hold a public hearing on May 8th, 2023 at 7:10 p.m., continued from April 24th, 2023, in the Francis Faulkner Hearing Room 204 at the Town Hall, 472 Main Street, Acton, and virtually at actonma.gov/meeting/BOS on the application of MAG RE Holdings-Acton, LLC, for a site plan special permit under zoning bylaw sections 10.4 and 6.7.9 at 1 and 5 Nagog Park and 599 Great Road to redevelop the property into an automobile dealership. Application materials and how to participate remotely are available online at Acton Town Hall, http://acton-ma.gov/ds-web/view/collection-16374. The applicant has requested a continuance to May 22nd, 2022 at 7:10 p.m. Do we have any participation by the applicant? Does not appear so. I would be happy to hear a motion to continue this hearing until May 22nd, 2022 at 7:10 p.m. David?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. A continuance discussion. Jim?
No, just keep us up to date on, since you're the select board member assigned to this, just, please keep us and the public up to date on any changes. It was really helpful to hear from you that there were, plan changes afoot. So anything like that, just looking forward to hearing it.
Lisa?
Hi, Kate Chung, 254 Brown Bear Crossing. I just have a question about that. My understanding is there's actually 2 dealerships going in, and my understanding is one is a done deal, but the second one needs a special permit. And I'm just wondering if that's correct, and if it is correct, why the first one didn't need a special permit.
Well, I don't want to go deeply into it, but I would say that nothing's a done deal at this point. That we've not opened the hearing yet. We've not, although some of us have seen some of the plans, we've not officially reviewed anything. It's all under staff. The staff review is going on right now and has gone on in the past. So I think it's more appropriate to hold that question until the 22nd of May. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. We need a roll call vote. I will call the roll to continue the hearing until May 22nd, 2023, 7:10 p.m. David?
Aye.
Fran?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Alyssa?
Aye.
And Dean says aye. Continued until May 22nd, 7:10 p.m. Thank you. Okay, the next public hearing The Acton Select Board will hold a public hearing on May 8th, 2023 at 7:15 p.m. in the Francis Faulkner Hearing Room 204 at Town Hall, 472 Main Street, Acton, and virtually on the application of True West Brewing Company, LLC, located at 525 Massachusetts Avenue, Acton, Mass., under Chapter 140, Section 181 of the Massachusetts General Laws for an entertainment license. The application can be inspected at Town Hall during normal business hours. Login instructions for computers can be found here. For a computer, please click on the link to join the public meeting, actonma.gov/meeting/BOS, or from a telephone, dial 646-876-9923 and enter webinar ID number 503-918-785. Telephone users may dial *9 to request to speak after joining the meeting. Computer and app users may use the raise hand feature to request to speak. Would the applicant please come forward?
Hello, Peter Henry from 147 Waite Road in Boxborough. True West is applying for an entertainment license through the town. We have recently, we're actually not looking to do anything different than we've been doing for the last, now in our 8th year in the village. We have a trivia night on Tuesday nights, and we have acoustic music or bands play within the brewery on Wednesday nights, and sometimes on weekend evenings. During past summers, for pretty much every summer that we've been open, we've moved that music outside, and we've had a lot of people sitting outside in the courtyards and on the patio at True West and Village Works. Recently we had some concerns from some neighbors with regards to noise, and I provided my personal cell phone to a neighbor and said, if there's a concern or an issue, please feel free to use it. They certainly have used it, and I believe myself and my staff have made sure that when a concern is voiced, that we do turn it down, usually within 10-15 minutes of that question or concern being raised to us. And so in the process of that, I believe that the neighbor had reached out to the town and was having meetings with the town, and so I simply asked if there was something that we should be doing that we're not, because we just want to be good neighbors. We're not trying to do anything additional to what we've been doing, and I was told by some people at the town that it would be good if we had an entertainment license. That's what we should be doing. I know that ignorance is not a defense, but I didn't know that I needed one prior to this. So all I'm trying to do at this point is come into compliance with the town's requirements to have an entertainment license, but I'm really not looking to do anything more than what we've been doing.
Okay, thank you. You might want to stay there. There'll be some questions. I think you should be aware that the members of the Select Board have received numerous letters, emails on both sides of the issue. So I will open it up to my fellow board members to see if anyone has any comments they'd like to make. David?
First, if I could just ask a question. Can you just tell me what time during the week and on weekends the outdoor activities end? Not eating, but the outdoor entertainment activities end?
Sure. Right now, what we do is we have like an acoustic duo, or sometimes there's a guitar player and a pianist play from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. on Wednesdays. We have also had, in the past during the summer, we've had live music outside in the afternoons on, say, a Saturday, or an early evening on a Friday from like 4 to 6 or 4 to 7 p.m. And then we have trivia on Tuesday nights that goes from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. I know in the application, there's no mention of, there's only an ask of what our operating hours are. I put that into the application, but there was a question, I think, that came from the chief of police about any consideration for any type of limitation on hours or anything like that. And, we're certainly open to a conversation about, stopping anything that would be live outside at, say, 9 p.m. or something like that. We've offered to have a conversation and come to a compromise, and we're happy to do that.
Thank you. There are other places in town, not necessarily for entertainment per se, but for where we try to limit noise everywhere after 10. So that weekend is fine. And this is just a personal thing. During the week, it makes sense for me that it end at end at 9, or at least the speakers and the outside music. Thank you. I just want to make a little statement that I think that gathering places are extremely important to community. And they're important to combat the isolation. And I think True West is one of the best gathering places we have in town. It's certainly frequented. People drop in, not only in the very local neighborhood of West Acton, but from elsewhere in town. And I think that we actually need more of these places where people can drop in and gather and meet, and not fewer. I will also say that True West was very proactive in moving things outside during the pandemic. And I think everybody's, frankly, has appreciated that. So it's different than it was before the pandemic, but I think it's for the better myself. Thank you.
Thank you. Fran?
Pete, what are your regular hours?
Sure. Right now, we open for lunch at noon on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then on Sundays, our kitchen closes at 8 o'clock, and we're typically closed by 9 to 9:30, depending on when people leave. On Mondays, we close at 9 o'clock, and everybody's typically out by 10-ish. And then Wednesday, it's 11, and Friday and Saturday, it's midnight. But we're certainly not asking for anything at those times. Outside, certainly no.
I just also wanted to add how I don't go to True West a ton, but I happened to be there on a trivia night, and it was a lot of fun. There were probably there weren't any empty seats that I could see, and and all ages of folks enjoying themselves. So I'm happy True West is there. And I think that from also a musician standpoint, it's nice to hear live music, especially they've been hit hard during COVID. So I would like to have paying musicians in our town, so.
Thank you.
Hi, thanks for all you do. Looking at the list of concerns that have been raised, I had a couple questions. One was there was a reference to a birthday party in September that went past midnight, and do you know what that was about?
I don't know. Last September, I could certainly look at our book. If there is a specific concern about an event, I would be more than happy to address it. And if there's, like I said, if there is a time limit or a constraint that needs to be put on this entertainment license, I'm happy to discuss it and would certainly be receptive to the feedback, because having grown up here and my parents are still in West Acton, it's certainly of our best interest to make sure that we're fitting in well and we're contributing to that community. So, yeah, if there's a specific concern about an event, it was not brought to my attention.
Okay, yeah, thanks. And I think my other question was probably for the town manager, if I might. So, John, some of the complaints were about things that are outside of True West's control, like people going outside at the end of, eating or drinking at True West and being loud outside. And I don't know if we have any, if there's a regulatory approach to that, if that's something that, could someone call the police about loud noise outside? Or what can people do when, people are just, being boisterous after hours?
Yes, if someone's causing a disturbance outside, then the police should be called to address it.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so I mean, in summary, I'm agreeing with the general tendency of the conversation here, which is there's some restrictions on hours that we can discuss. The only other thing I saw here that was interesting to me was that sometimes, like on rainy nights, there's nobody outside. So the outdoor speakers can be off in those situations. That seems like that would not remove the enjoyment of the people inside, but would create a lower volume for the people who are living next door.
Sure. The speakers being on outside, I think, at any point, at any time, just like if you would go to, I think probably any restaurant or what have you, they may have small speakers outside that are playing music as you approach. Kind of makes the venue feel more alive, and you instantly feel a little bit more comfortable going inside, like you're not going to be the only people there. That certainly is the intent of it. I will say that we do try to keep the music down outside at a reasonable level. I will absolutely acknowledge that the problem, we do have at times a problem that volume is controlled by a dial, and that dial is controlled by a human being. And sometimes, no matter how much we train some human beings, and we post times about when the dial is supposed to be turned down, sometimes some assistant managers forget to do it. It does happen. I acknowledge that it happens. It's certainly not, it's not left up loud intentionally, but I will acknowledge that it does stay on. And I do think that there's probably a volume level that would hopefully be acceptable to everybody. And I'm more than happy to stand outside with anybody that would like to on a clear night, a rainy night, and figure out at what level it is appropriate or is not, and make sure, do my darndest to train those people to keep it below that dial level.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Alyssa.
Thank you. So there's a couple things that I would like to understand. First is, what is the entertainment license for specifically? Is it required only for the live events, like the trivia and live music, or is the town requiring an entertainment license for the outdoor speakers that would just play music from the radio?
So the license, the entertainment license does not address trivia. It's only for entertainment, live entertainment, such as acoustic music or a vocal music from a singer. So it's not, if they have the radio on, that's not considered entertainment under this license. It's just when there's a live performance.
So trivia, even though it is an entertainment and it's a vocal calling out, that's not considered
My understanding.
under this.
Oh, sorry.
I just don't understand why trivia would not be considered live entertainment, just because there's no singing involved.
I think that's where we're going on, and trivia is not addressed in this.
Okay. So something else I would like to understand, I should, actually, I forgot to mention this, that I work at the same elementary school as one of the folks across the street who has sent in a letter, and I still feel like I can make a decision on this fairly. My question would be, in terms of consistency, I remember this board had a similar hearing for an entertainment license for Frolic and Detour last July, and it was brought to the board because there were complaints from abutters about noise, and within just a couple of weeks, the town had figured out that the restaurant needed an entertainment license, and in the decision to grant that entertainment license, there was a specification that all of the music had to be inside and the doors needed to be closed to prevent disturbance to the neighbors. So I'm wondering what the other board members feel is different in this case, or whether or not the board needs to be consistent in its decision for this license.
Anybody want to take that one on?
I have comments to add. I think the spaces are completely different. I think Frolic and Detour is a huge space compared to True West. And what was the other question, Alyssa? Sorry. I mean, it's such a great space in West Acton to have a guitarist outside. I think a lot of people enjoy that, so that's my comment.
David?
Maybe I'm not recalling properly, but I don't remember us ever conditionalizing a license. I don't know if we can conditionalize a license, right? A license is an application that we grant or don't grant. I don't know that we can condition a license. I mean, we could not grant it, but anyway, I don't remember conditionalizing the license.
I think I recall the conversation, and I think a lot of the situation with Frolic and Detour was also involved with, it was there was a lot of very amplified music, and it was, you know, a pretty large event compared to what's being contemplated here with True West. But I do remember the conversation. Lise, do you have any recollection of any conditions we might have put on that license? Okay, thank you. Fran?
Just one more question. As far as needing an entertainment license, when a new restaurant goes to permitting, is this something that is brought up with the building department as something that they might need in the future if you're planning on music or?
So over the last year, the revitalized or the revived Economic Development Office, led by Julie Pierce, she's been focused on making sure that type of information is communicated to businesses that are starting or even ones that are already here. And so we're doing our best to do that now. I can't speak to what was happening before.
Because I do know that Twin Seafood has bands as well. I don't know if they have an entertainment license.
If I may?
Yes, please.
Again, the reason we applied for the entertainment license was it was suggested to us to do so, kind of to your point, Fran, when we opened, we had always had plans to have acoustic music inside or on our patio. We'd always planned to have trivia nights. We'd planned to have events and again, I completely understand that ignorance is not a defense, but we were not aware that a special license above and beyond, the quite literally 25 licenses that we hold with the state, the town, and the federal government already was required to do that. So when the situation arose, the only reason that we put the application in was because we wanted to be in compliance. So, and again, we weren't putting the application in because we wanted to do anything additional or change anything we've been doing for the last, almost 8 or more than 7 years. The types of conversation, the compromise, we're more than happy to have that conversation. If people would be willing to have it with us, we're more than happy to have it.
Thank you. So, the comments I'll make, and I'm certainly going to open this to the public. There's got to be some back and forth on this. There was a real desire on the part of the town and in a lot of our planning documents to try to encourage these sorts of village centers and encourage these mixed uses. And I think, what's happened there with Village Works and True West is really the epitome of what a lot of people really like to see. However, keep in mind, you don't have to go too far before there's residences. That's the other half of the mixed use. So hopefully we can work out some kind of an amiable agreement as far as hours and volume and, the nature of the events, so that everybody can come away from this process with something in their hands. With that, I would open this to any questions from members of the public.
Mr. Chair, before you do that, could someone just tell me what Lisa said? Because I couldn't hear that. She's not on a mic.
Okay. So this was in regards to the situation at Frolic and Detour?
Yes.
So it's indoor only for Frolic and Detour.
Could I say one more thing?
Certainly.
Thank you. So I understand that Pete has written down his hours of operation, but the application asks for the hours and days of entertainment. So I would propose that the abutters and the applicant meet together to figure out, if we can't put limitations on this, but rather just approve it or deny it, maybe there needs to be a different application that comes back that specifies, a volume level and hours for each specific type of activity, whether it's, it sounds like trivia doesn't even get included in an entertainment license. It's just acoustic music and vocals.
Okay, thank you. Comments from the public?
And before I step away, I do want to say, Alyssa, that that type of conversation I've been happy to have. I've asked to have it previously. I've offered it, and I think it's a good forum for us to do it now and come to an agreement on something that will work for everybody. Yeah, thank you.
Annette Lockery, 57 Windsor Avenue. I just wanted to wholeheartedly support True West. They've been active members of WABMA since they opened. They've been really good neighbors. I happen to live in West Acton Village and thoroughly enjoy what they have not only brought to the village by themselves, but the spillover in terms of the feeling and the spirit that I think everybody else has mentioned. So I wholeheartedly support giving them the license they need to have music until 9 o'clock. I think that's very reasonable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Marjorie Norman. I live at 526 Mass Ave, right across from True West. This situation is intolerable. He's been playing, I've lived there 6 years. There's been music out of the speakers, trivia night. And the last 2 years, the situation has gotten worse with the live music outside every other week, starting in the spring, going through the summer, and into the fall. It is so loud in my house because of the speakers or amplifiers, I don't know what they're using, that there's not a quiet space anywhere. It's impossible to read. It's impossible to study. And it's almost impossible to even watch TV. And if you don't think that's a problem, go home every other week, blast your music, and sit down and try to relax and watch a television show. I don't know anybody who does that. And then 2 weeks later, go home, take a book out to read it, but blast your music again in the same room. It is just not okay. Even if you go home the next week, 2 weeks later, and you have a splitting headache, you have COVID, or you have the flu, blast your radio, because that's what I'm living with month after month after month while he has that outdoor music playing. And it's bad for my mental health, and it's bad for my physical health. On top of that, every Tuesday is trivia night, and when he has people out on the porch, he wants to play the trivia night. I don't want to hear trivia. He has trivia being announced through the winter. It will come blaring out, and I have to call and ask them to turn it off. Sometimes it happens quickly, sometimes it doesn't happen quickly, because I can't reach Pete. I've called, nobody answers the phone. I call back, they answer the phone, and then I'm told, I don't think we can do that. And then, oh, let me put you on hold, and they contact the manager. And then, if that's not enough, there's all the music that's always coming out of the speakers. And I hear it on the weekends from lunch until closing. I hear it through the winter when it's raining, when it's snowing, when it's 10 degrees out. Nobody is milling about outside listening to that music, but I'm sitting trying to read, and I hear the music, and it's not fair. I shouldn't have to move. Our condos were built in 1930, way before Pete put his business there, and he knew there were people living across the street. So I am begging you to please vote the way you did for Frolic and Detour. He could have music inside, trivia inside, everything inside, and still provide that for his patrons, and we could have a peaceful and quiet house again. My neighbors have all sent in letters. There are 4 of us who live there, and we're sick of it. And in terms of the birthday party, Pete, it was September 9th. I called at bedtime because the music was so loud. I was told, we can't turn on the music. The owner is celebrating his birthday. I said, well, you better, because I'm trying to sleep. Then at 12:15, I'm woken up with people coming out of the business, yelling, woohoo, and yoo-hoo, and somebody yelling, I am the monster. I mean, that's not being respectful for the neighborhood. I was up for 2 hours in the middle of the night, if not longer. And sometimes, another example is the band will finish playing outside, and then he has blasted a sports game after that, and I've had to text him, please turn it off. And when he was open later before COVID, then the music was blasting at like 11 o'clock, and I'm like, what is up? He said, oh, well, the staff are listening to the music while they clean up. I don't care, I'm trying to sleep at 11 o'clock. So, I don't know. You're my last hope. I was told maybe you could help. So I really wish that you would vote for inside speakers only, because it would make the neighbors happy, and he still gets to play music and all of that for his patrons.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sandra Grund. Thank you for letting me weigh in on this. I'm from the town of Stowe, but I stay at Marjorie's, a friend of Marjorie's, and I'll stay at her home sometimes to watch her pets, and I also frequently come to West Acton. And I just wanted to weigh in terms of what I noticed when I stayed there, which I'll echo what she said. The outdoor music is definitely an issue, and it doesn't seem to fit with, from what I've read on the Acton site, having a mixed-use development that supports the businesses, but also supports the people that live there. I think that doesn't mesh. Maybe it's the wrong location for the venue. If they want to have outdoor music, it might make sense to try and, if you're going to open a chain somewhere else, but I think it's not appropriate for, I had been looking at the Acton 2020 comprehensive plan. Acton calls itself a bedroom suburb. It has an underlying theme to try and preserve the small town feeling, which a lot of the community members feel makes it unique. I think that having, music outside so people can't, enjoy their homes in mixed-use neighborhoods. I know a lot of towns, including Acton, are also working to provide housing that's more affordable. They want to develop, you guys want to develop, based on your plans on your website, these centers so it has more of this housing for young families or for the elderly, so they can stay in place and whatnot. And I just don't think if you have a town center that has live music going on outside and speakers going on outside, that's a place that people are going to want to invest their money, and it's, to go and live there. I just think most people realistically do not want to listen to band music or do not want to listen to speakers actively happening across the street from their house all the time. So I just kind of wanted to weigh in as someone who had seen what she was going through, and also just someone in the same region, that I think that, there's this Welcome to Acton video that says, come and enjoy the pace of a small town. And I think from what I've seen in the open space and recreation plan and the town planning, there is this excitement to have like a sustainable community where you can have these types of mixed use developments, but we can't forget the humans that are living in these areas. And that's really a huge part of mixed use. I work in the environmental field. I worked for the state of Massachusetts. And, we can't just always go with what's best for the business, because we like to visit there for a couple hours on a Saturday and then go home to our quiet house. I think we have to keep in mind the people that live there. So I wholeheartedly support what Marjorie and her neighbors, and I know some other people in that area, have suggested, that it makes sense to be consistent with your rulings, to be consistent with your goals of having a community where people can have quiet and peace in a reasonable way, and to be to have them receive a license that provides for entertainment inside with the doors and windows closed. So I just thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Bill Clower, Piper Road. I watched back when we had the hearing on the property up at Lake Nagog, and I thought to myself at that point in time, there's a problem with acoustics up in this area, and that is water does not absorb sound, so it just bounces right off the top like a mirror. And I could understand why the board reached a compromise to close the music in, because the people that are right behind there on Village of Nagog Woods would get it head on. I'm not too sure in this particular case what you're dealing with, but we do have decibel meters. And we could go up there, you could go up there with one of these things and just find out what the sound level is. And if there's a problem, deal with it. But I don't see that it's totally out of control, because most sound systems have volume on it. So, I mean, this room is an absolute good example. Alyssa came in here perfectly clear. You folks don't carry it all. So, I mean, there's something wrong with the volume of this room. I know that. But you have the control over it, and just tell them, hey, we can't get disturbing the peace. 9:30 at night is the cutoff point or something, but it definitely, the ball is in your court. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, good evening. My name is Dick Krieger. I'm at 62 Washington Drive. Just comment because somebody brought up the town planning, kind of the vision for Acton. I've been in numerous meetings for that, for Acton 2020 and before, and I sure hope that the direction that Acton is going is that we don't eliminate having live music or music and entertainment outdoors. I'm with a group of people who have been champions several times in trivia at True West. And I must say, especially during the pandemic, being able to go out in that terrace and having a common meeting place has just been outstanding. And really, one of the things that strikes me is the people that I typically am with are from different towns. And we're looking for something like that. We bring our money to something like that. As a town member, I want something like that. I think it ends up being much more fulfilling to have something like that. So I'm sure that there is some sort of compromise that could be made to continue to have that kind of entertainment and just engagement with the community. And I will say, having been there several times, that I've been there when somebody has gone and turned the volume down in trivia and been responsive, and find out later, like, oh, it ended up being too loud, and seeing the responsiveness happen. So I'm certain that that Pete, the kind of staff that he has, will be very responsive to however whatever is agreed upon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Greg Arsenal, 7 Mohegan Road. I had a question for the board regarding the zoning of that block of Mass Ave in terms of, is it commercial residential? Obviously, that whole West Acton village has been built there with a variety of different businesses, so I was just curious as to what is the zoning officially.
David.
I think it's West Acton Village zoning. So you would have to go look up to see what all the rules are in that district. Oh, are you asking about a particular thing?
No, I'm just trying to, it's obviously zoned and built with a purpose to have a village and have multi-purpose businesses there, including restaurants, including 3 restaurants if you count the ice creamery currently, or even downstairs, the sandwich place downstairs. So the point is, if you're going to try to have a village in a town where there are businesses, especially restaurants, that need to have patrons, number one, it's really tough for a very, very small number of abutters in that location. I can't think of too many other places in Acton you could actually do a True West and not have houses a lot more close, many more houses a lot closer to the venue than where it is located in West Acton. There's nothing, coming out, facing it, there's nothing on the right-hand side of Mass Ave that has any population at all. It's really just the abutters, unfortunately, right across the street. Otherwise, you have the park across the street. Sound's not going to really carry that much down into those other houses. I don't know if letters have come in from those people on the backside of the park. You've got the mobile station. It really is one of the more remote places for outside venue entertainment. So, again, I would argue that if somebody's expecting to be living right next to a commercial district where there are businesses that might have entertainment, then, and that annoys you, I would argue you might want to look for property in the remote accesses of a farm out in Harvard or something, and then come here and complain about the turkeys and the coyotes that scream at night.
Thank you.
Good evening. Paul Swiden, 44 Flint Road, and owner of the Silver Unicorn Bookstore. I just want to say that recently, Julie Pierce, who has done a wonderful job as our town's economic director, convened a meeting with local politicians and state politicians and small business owners throughout the town, asking what the town can do to support small business, how we can encourage small business to come to our towns. I would say you probably wouldn't want them to show them tape of the last half hour. Running a small business before dealing with any regulatory hurdles is like hitting the bullseye on a dartboard 3 times in a row in the same spot. It is incredibly difficult, and I know that I work very hard to do it. I know that Pete works even harder because there are simply, as he mentioned, he has 25 different licenses, whether at the local or state level. That is an extraordinary amount of work. And I don't have any specific beef with Marjorie. Marjorie has been very supportive of my store. I just would hope that you would consider how difficult it is to run a small business. And from my chair, it seems like Pete is being browbeaten for being responsible here. Several of the questions from this board were outside the scope of what the license is for, and I don't find that very fair, and I find to be a waste of everyone's time. And I think, as both Pete and Marjorie have said, there is a compromise here, and it saddens me that Pete had to spend time here tonight. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just had another comment as a person that lives across the street from True West, that some of us have lived here for many years. I've been there for 17 years, so it's not a question of things have changed around us. It's not, and so I think just need to take that into consideration. And also, I think, to confirm what Marjorie said, this has been going on for a long time in terms of people trying to trying to deal with the issue, and hopefully there will be consideration for those of us who have lived in the area for many years as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Linda Oneska again, Nagog Woods. I was in Nagog when the Frolic and Detour that went on from 12 o'clock till 11 o'clock at night. They said they had a license. Turned out they never had a license. And it sounds to me the issue isn't about small business. It's about noise. It's about noise pollution and how to address that. And as this gentleman says, people go turn up a dial. You can, I guess, put limits on that. It's about, you can use acoustic panels. I expressed concern about what's going to be potentially built in Nagog because I've seen what's happened in the past. Can be very noisy AC, compressors. But this is about noise. I love jazz, Some people, it would be, put their teeth on edge. But I think to put it in perspective, it shouldn't be about business. We never had an issue with the Rusty Scupper, the Red Raven. A new business came in, they decided to run something outdoors, they put it loud, and then it became an issue.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nick Amendolia, 6 Elm Court. I would just like to support True West in their endeavor to obtain a entertainment license. I deal with restaurants in my job every day, and it is a very competitive market. And what Pete's done here, the hometown kid, started his own business, raising a family here. He's trying to make Acton, like you said, Mr. Martin, a gathering place. And that's what he wants True West to be. And if you hinder him in that way, you're going to hinder other small businesses and other Actonians from bringing their small business back to town after they graduate high school, graduate college. You need to, I would hopefully support your own. He's trying to make a living as a restaurateur. It's not an easy thing. It's a very, very hard thing. It's a competitive market. I would just hope you take that in consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's Tara from West Acton again. I'm really sympathetic to small business and how hard it is, and I hope that you work something out. But I also have been in West Acton with the music, and you can hear it blocks away. It's easy to think of a place you like to go, as someone said, when you can go back to your quiet house. These folks, I don't think, voted for the village zoning, and I urge you to look at zoning votes very carefully to see whether it changes the uses allowed right next to your house. So that aside, the zoning is there. I feel like there's separate issues here. There's the license for entertainment, and whether it's indoor or outdoor. There's also the license, isn't there a license for amplification, outdoor amplification that's required? Or could be, negotiated separately? I feel like, I hope you continue this, because to see all 5 of you to not know about the license and whether it was conditioned, whether there's a license for amplification outdoors versus, speaking into a mic, which would be amplification, which would be separate from an entertainment license if entertainment only includes singing. I also propose that if this is such an important place, which my feelings about the project aside, a lot of people like it, and if it's in tune with the goals of the master plan, that you pay these folks for the property value impact, help them move, whatever it is. But I think something has to be done more than just approve or disapprove this license. Again, because he doesn't want to have to get complaints all the time, and it seems like he wants to follow the rules. What are the rules? It occurred to me, I wonder if there are 2 separate dials, one for outdoor and one for indoor, but that could be part of these licenses. I believe that licenses can, in fact, be conditioned. These are questions I feel like that warrant a continuance to figure out a solution, because I really do feel like there could be a good solution here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I believe we have a couple of people online that would like to speak.
Yes, Mr. Chair. The first one is Lynn Parker.
Okay.
Lynn, you should be able to speak.
Yes, please let her in.
Hello. I live across the street from the development as well. And I have to say, I am offended at some of the tone that I've been hearing tonight. as if residents of Acton are less important than a business owner in Acton. And I'm not in any way undercutting the value of small businesses in Acton, but I also don't like my life, the way I live undercut and undervalued as well. And I actually was going to ask the question about what are the rules for playing music outside through speakers. We haven't addressed that, and I'd like to know where that is, because I have walked my dog late at night where no one's around with the music blasting. So I understand that Pete is saying now that he is willing to work with all of us, but we all have stories of the fact that actually didn't happen. You can't reach him, or there are saying that there are employees who make mistakes is fine, but ultimately he's in charge of those employees. So I would just ask you to please remember, we are citizens of Acton. We matter. Our lives matter. So please, it might be a place you want to go, but you get to go home. We don't. Thank you.
Thank you. Matt, next one.
May I speak for one moment? I apologize. I don't mean to cut in front, but I wanted to just address the concern that Lynn just brought up, because I think it's very appropriate what she's saying, and I agree with her. I just want everybody that's in the room and everybody that's watching the session to know, and the people that have spoken on my behalf, I really appreciate people having come out and supported myself and supported the business. But I don't think that True West as a business, or myself personally, necessarily shares the sentiment, some of the sentiment that they're expressing. We do want to be a good neighbor. I have heard from Marjorie in the past. I've never heard from anybody else. I'll just say that. I've heard from Marjorie. No other business. Well, next door, the real estate agency has asked us to move some things around, and we've, once they asked us to, we chatted as business owners, and I was able to accommodate it. I do agree that you should have a place to live and a place that you enjoy living, and a place that's quiet when you need it to be quiet. I don't want to have music on at midnight, and Tara, to answer your question, we did invest about $14,000 in acoustic panels on the inside of the restaurant, and we did also invest, another $1,000 to run separate sound circuits for outside, so I can independently turn them on and off. That was something that we learned after, I think, the first 3 or 4 months of being open, that we needed to change that. Like I said, I do appreciate, but I do appreciate some of the sentiment that's been shared by some of my fellow small business owners and some of the people that have spoken on my behalf, but I want you to know that I am happy to have the conversation, and I have extended myself to have that conversation before tonight. But I was told no. I was told they'd rather, that they would rather deal with it themselves through the town absent me, which I don't know how that will really work unless the goal is just to shut us down as a business. So I just wanted to say, Lynn, I agree with you. As a business owner, I'm not more important than you as a resident. Please don't think that sentiment was coming from myself or from the brewery.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we've got a couple of the people online I'd like to hear from before I forget about them, and then I'll get back to you folks. Matt, we got some more online?
There are no other hands, Mr. Chair, but Lynn did put her hand back up.
Okay.
May I speak again?
Yes, briefly.
I believe, I feel that this is close to slander. I have complained. I don't want to get into a I said, they said kind of situation, but we have talked to him. I have talked to him about many issues, and I'm not saying he is not a amiable, personable man who would like to get along. But saying that and doing that aren't always the same thing. And I do feel that this committee or these conversations tend to be by people who get to leave. He gets to leave. So yes, I do think that this is a case of suggesting that some of us, our rights might be less important than others. And I would appreciate not being ad hominem argument that it's something personal, that we didn't get in touch with him or we weren't willing to negotiate. We've all tried. Thank you.
Thank you. We got two people left standing. We're going to hear from those two folks, and then we're going to cut off public input and let the board discuss this. Please come forward.
Pete did come to me about 2.5 or 3 weeks ago to talk about compromising, listening to the music, and that's the first time he's come over to compromise in 6 years since I've lived there. And at that point, I'd already scheduled a meeting with John and Julie, and I said, I'm not interested in trying to compromise. I don't know how I would do that. I don't want to hear the outdoor music anymore. And I'll wait until I speak with John and Julie and see what they say to me about how they might be able to help. So it's not as if he's come to me a lot or came to me the first 2 years or the third year or the fourth year to compromise. He comes to say, I'm sorry. He comes to say, I hope that they've turned it off every time you've called, but never to compromise until I've spoken to the town. And now he's coming to try to compromise. But I don't, other than him having indoor music with the speakers off, I don't know what else to say. I'm fried.
Thank you.
Thank you again. I'll be quick. I just wanted to second what the woman who came up and said, that we really need to focus on, I think, what people are saying and objection of the outdoor music, which is they're an objection of having the noise outside of the establishment. I think everybody really wants to see small businesses in Acton survive and thrive. It's not a supporting small business argument, because I think that with music indoors, he can, do well, and certainly was. And I think a lot of establishments moved outside during COVID, and a lot of towns are having the same issue, because now they're taking advantage of not wanting to go back inside with the music. And I know that a lot of different small towns, you have it down the Cape, you have it up here, are having the same contentious discussions, which is really unfortunate. But I do think that we need to notice that none of the residents that have spoken are against small business. They're just wanting, a reasonable, quiet, comfortable place to live. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So, fellow board members, we are not going to be taking any more public comment. Thank you. David.
So I think we could, accept her, well, let me just say, we could deny this permit and we wouldn't have solved the problem. And so I don't see any reason to deny it. I think there's two different issues here myself. One is that the entertainment license, which allows music outside, and I think people really enjoy that patio space, and it's become a really special place starting in the pandemic. And I think it would be tough to lose that. However, I'm very sympathetic to especially the late night noise. There are many places and contexts in town where we limit noise after 10 o'clock, especially 10 o'clock, and maybe earlier in some places. And so it's not part of this license. Maybe it's actually a health department thing or a zoning thing, or I don't know, or maybe we have no regulation currently. But I think the speakers outside should go off at 10 o'clock, 9 o'clock during the week. Myself, I think having the speakers outside, I understand Mr. Henry's desire to have an active place around dinner time. It seems inviting, but I don't think it needs to be inviting at 10:30. And so that's just my opinion. I think we should focus on the quiet later at night, and that's what we do in other parts of town and in other situations.
Thank you. Comments from other members? Jim.
So I would be curious to understand what the decibel levels are. My understanding is that the noise regulations that apply to Acton are state regulations, that we don't have a specific Acton noise bylaw. And when I remember of other noise complaints in other places, I think the noises have to be quite loud in order to trigger that state regulation, but I think it's still worth checking to see. In terms of the times that you've suggested, David, I think that's the right kind of approach. I had a half hour earlier in my mind. We heard from a number of the business owners that testified that in letters that that their understanding was that the music stops at 8:30 on weekday evenings. So I was thinking in my mind of an 8:30 p.m. weekdays, 9:30 p.m. weekends kind of request to have the speakers off. The other thing I wonder about is the the sort of minimal, that sort of quiet sound that you hear when you're walking right towards the restaurant, and you get a little sound, a little music to sort of invite you in, and I'm sympathetic to that. I think that's a reasonable thing to have. I don't know how to write that in terms of a condition or a regulation, or whether it's just a request, or whether it requires some further research, but I'm open to that, as long as the actual as long as the main speaker volume goes way down at the times that we agree on.
Thank you. David.
Yeah, a couple things. I agree, Jim, as far as I know, we haven't monitored sound levels, but what we have done in other cases is required that activities cease. Certain activities, it depends on because some cases it's deliveries, and in some cases it's other things. So we haven't said that we can't have deliveries more than 70 decibels, but we have said you can't do that activity after 10 o'clock at night. But in this case, I'm a little concerned about conditionalizing the license. I'm not sure. I'd like to find out if we really conditionalized it. I don't know how we would track conditions in licenses. Where we condition permits, we have specific mechanisms to track the conditions in permits. We don't have such mechanisms here. And also, I don't think that this entertainment license is the problem. I would like to grant the entertainment license and then work on, maybe starting informally with Mr. Henry to have the speakers off at whatever hours we want to recommend, and then work towards a kind of a permanent solution, whatever that involves. For example, there can be zoning regulations that require certain activities to cease at certain times and things like that. So I don't know what the final solution is for the noise, but I think the late night noise is a problem, and that's what we've addressed in other areas of town.
Thank you. Alyssa, do you have a comment?
Yes, thank you. So I'm still uncomfortable with approving this license because the application has the operating hours as the hours for the entertainment. So I think we need to see another application with the hours specified. So while I'm comfortable in theory with what David just proposed, granting the license and sorting out hours later, the application has the operating hours. And so that seems really problematic to me. And I'm also wondering about what we can do in terms of not having amplification, if that was what the issue was over at Frolic and Detour, if this can be a license just for acoustic music. And it seems that if we can get the abutters and the applicant together to sort out hours, I always thought about, what must it be like to live near Nara Park in the summertime because of the concerts. But, that's only 8 concerts a year. And I also don't think it's distance or water, because I can tell you on School Street in South Acton, I can hear the high school band practicing all the way over here, and we're a mile and a half away. So I think we really do need to look at amplification and decibels and hours, and figuring out what's going to be a reasonable time. If the application has the operating hours, that means that the music can go on from live music can go on from 12 noon until they close at 10 on Saturdays.
Thank you.
That's just a lot of time, and maybe we need to limit it to a certain number of hours per day, like 3 hours for a Saturday band.
Thank you. Lisa, these licenses, would this track with our other licenses that they would expire at the end of December? Okay, thank you. So if we are talking about a license, it does have a limited time span, and I think, John?
I was just going to answer the question to the mic. Yes, the answer is yes.
It was a loud yes. So I guess my question to the town manager is, do you think it would be fruitful for yourself and Julie Pierce to engage with the applicant and with the neighbors further, or would you like us to grant a permit, or would you like us to grant some sort of guide rails that we might like to talk about? What's the best way to help you proceed in this?
Well, I think that the request is to be licensed to provide live entertainment during those hours listed on the application. And if the board was to grant that, we would work with the business owner and the neighbors, as we've already started, to address any concerns as they come up. I do believe since we met, Julie, the economic development director, and I met with a few of the neighbors within the last month, and I believe some of the concerns were addressed in that intervening time, which is a sign of progress. But I mean, it's something that we would stay on and ensure that if there's a slip up there, we report back. And so I would be willing to work with those involved to make sure that a license granted is adhered to.
Fran?
Can we approve it tonight and just follow up with hours of when we think music will be playing?
I think my interpretation is that a request, if approved, this application would allow the venue to operate, to provide live music during the operating hours listed in the application.
Yeah, pardon me, as the applicant, I would actually agree with that point. And if it's acceptable to the select board, I'd like to withdraw the permit application, and I'd like to have the conversation with the abutters, with my neighbors, and craft into the permit something that they are comfortable with, and then resubmit it. It is not my goal to get the permit and go run over there and turn the music up and go crazy. That's certainly not my goal or intent. Whatever happens, I will say this, and Marjorie, you're right. I hadn't approached you until that point. But the one thing that I did think was going to be good about applying for the permit would be that this conversation would at least come out, and we could all express some of this. And, Lynn, I apologize that I don't remember our conversation specifically, but I do hear the discomfort that you guys are in, and I don't want that. It really is my goal to try to work with you. So I'd like to withdraw my application if you don't mind, and if John or Julie wants to arrange a meeting with us, and we can all sit down and talk about, maybe there is some level of compromise. We completely leave the speakers off at certain times, and then we are given a 3-hour time on 2 days a week or something like that. I would be happy to do it that way. I agree. I don't think you can approve a permit with the hours on it the way it's written, because then it's just approved that way, right? So that's not the intent of how we put the permit application together. It was more naivete on what was actually required on it. The original one we did looked like it was more for a one-time type of event, and that was confusing to us. And so when we put it in, we just said, we'll just put our operating hours on there, and then I kind of assumed that in this in this meeting we would come to nothing outside after 9 p.m. or something like that, and that would be written into it. But if we need to put it back into the application prior, I'm happy to do that.
Okay, thank you. David?
Should we move to take no action on this, or move to continue it to a future time?
I tend to think that move to take no action, because I think if we do a continuance, then we end up with the original document again.
Okay,
So
then I would move to take no action on this permit.
And second.
Okay, moved and seconded to take no action. Discussion from board members. Jim?
Just thanks to everyone. This is a very useful conversation and a good step forward. Thank you.
Alyssa?
I also just wanted to say thank you for the willingness of the applicant to withdraw the application and come back after meeting with the neighbors. That's really stupendous.
Okay, thank you. The one point I'd like to make, because, we don't want this hanging all summer long. I hope that a new application comes back to us by, I would say, our first meeting in June. John, does that seem like a reasonable time frame?
Absolutely. I wouldn't think it would take that long.
Okay, well, as soon as we can get all the parties together, I think this would be great. I'd like to thank you, Pete, for coming forward with that. Certainly showed good faith on your part, and thank you for the neighbors. We hear you. We appreciate it. We all live in town too. I'll take the roll call then. All in favor of Mr. Martin's motion to allow the withdrawal of this permit? Jim?
Aye.
Alyssa?
Aye.
Fran?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
And I say aye as well. Thank you. It'll be a continuing conversation. All right. Next item for consideration is board reorganization. So I think what I will do is ask for nominations for chair.
Just a point of order, maybe you could help clear the room
Yep.
before we talk more?
Okay, so we'll look for nominations for chair, vice chair, and clerk. I'll entertain any nominations.
May I just say, people shouldn't be shy about nominating themselves, and in fact, in my opinion, if someone doesn't nominate themselves, I'd like to see them be the second, just so, because I think one important thing is that a member who's selected to be an officer have the time and inclination to be that officer. So I think it's quite important.
Thank you. Jim?
Well, in that spirit, I'll nominate myself as chair.
Okay.
I'll second that.
So we have, Jim has nominated himself to be chair, seconded by David.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So last year, we had not just a thumbs up, thumbs down vote on a single individual, but we had multiple candidates. We're doing the same thing again?
I certainly would entertain a full range of candidates.
Go ahead.
I would nominate David to be chair.
I'll second that.
Do we have any other nominations? Okay. Jim?
Little candidate speeches?
That would really be great.
Okay. I bowed out of being chair a couple of times before, but now I feel ready enough to do it. I think it'd be a good transition to keep bringing new people into leadership. But people should know that if they end up voting for me, a couple things are true. One is that I think we're not served well by super long meetings. So I would be a chair who was possibly encouraging us to have additional meetings, but keep them short. So people should know that that's part of what they're wandering into by having me as chair. The other thing they should know is that I have been, in my excitement about the potential of being chair, I've written down a lot of half-baked ideas about a goal that's very important to me, which is increasing the accessibility, the understandability, the transparency of what we do as a select board. So there may be a series of experiments that we'll try, and we will like them or not, and then learn from them and move on. So people should know that a time with me as chair might be interesting in both the positive and negative aspects of that. Yeah, I think everything else about me potentially being chair, people know. We've worked together for a while. You know the way I operate. You know my temperament. So I don't think I have to say anything more about that.
Thank you. David?
Thank you. I think that the most important thing of chair is to be able to have the confidence of the other members of the board. Specifically, the last time I was chair, I made sure that if there was any issue that a board member would be concerned about, I made sure that it was brought up, and I did not take any actions that I thought would not be, supported by the board. And I think that's a key feature of a chair, right? I think that's quite important. And I think it's good that the chair be a little bit of a generalist. I think I'm a generalist. You know, I dabble in a lot of different things on the board. So other than that, don't have anything else really to say.
Thank you. Comments from other board members? Okay. So, we have two candidates for chair. And, let me say right up front, both of these gentlemen are people that I have severe differences in political points of view, but I have known both of them for a number of years and have found them truly to be gentlemen, and I certainly enjoyed my time here as chair, and I look forward to my time as a member. And I bear no animosity towards either of these gentlemen, despite on occasion you might have seen a few flashes from the red-headed temper. So, all in favor of Jim as chair, please raise your, well, we're going to have to do a roll call. So I guess we'll do it that way. So I'll call the roll, and folks can just speak the name of the person they would like to see as chair. And I'll start with Alyssa.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Jim.
Jim. Fran?
Jim.
David?
I'll vote for Jim as well.
And Jim? Still interested?
Yes, Jim.
Jim? And I'll make it unanimous. Jim to be chair. And before I hand over the gavel, why don't we establish the other two officers? So, for vice chair, looking for nominations or self-nominations? David?
I'd like to nominate myself.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay. Second by Alyssa. Jim?
I think these multi-person elections are more exciting. I'll nominate Fran.
I'll second that.
Okay. David, do you want to explain what a great vice chair you would be?
So the importance to me in vice chair, and the board allowed me last year to be one of our delegates to the ALG, even though I was not either chair or vice chair, is to be on ALG, right? I have a strong interest in the finance issues of the town, and I have a pretty good understanding of the finance issues in the town. And so I would like to be on ALG in either case, right? Whether I was chair or, vice chair, or if I didn't get elected and the people on the rest of you on the board were interested in having me be the delegate, one of the delegates to ALG again, I'd be very interested in doing that.
Thank you. Fran?
again, would have a huge learning curve and probably would be bugging you, Jim, constantly. But I think that I'm willing to learn the chair, what it would take to be a chair, and I would be happy to share the ALG process with you, David, because I know that there would be a huge learning curve for me, but I'm up for it.
Jim?
One of the reasons I nominated you, Fran, is because I feel like your voice has been underrepresented in our public discussions. So I was hoping that, maybe in the quiet of the agenda setting meetings, that, what your thoughts and your goals, your impressions, would be able to come out more. Because I'd like to make sure that we, spread the work around and encourage more leadership.
Okay, other comments from other members of the board? If not, Alyssa, once again, you're on the hot seat. Who would you vote for?
Fran.
Could you repeat that?
Fran.
Right, okay. Thank you. Jim?
Fran.
David?
Also Fran.
Fran?
Oh, no, Fran.
Make it unanimous. Fran as vice chair.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Clerk. I would nominate Alyssa to be clerk.
I do not want to second that.
Yeah. And I hope I can get a second on that from somebody.
I think she should second it, because, right, she needs to have the time and inclination to do it.
Alyssa, would you second that?
I would like to not second that this year, my first year.
Okay. I respect that.
Thank you.
Okay. So, nominations for clerk. I will self-nominate. If somebody will second, I will nominate myself.
Second.
Okay. So my only comment is, I guess I've gone full circle because I started out 4 years ago as clerk, and I think I can handle it, mostly because Lisa keeps us out of trouble. I hope to keep myself available to support the chair and the vice chair and all the members of the board. Are there any other nominations? Okay. Alyssa, would you be willing to vote?
Dean.
Okay.
Yes. I was just wondering whether to say I or Dean, because we only have one nominee.
Okay. David?
Dean.
Fran?
Dean.
Jim?
Dean.
And Dean says Dean. Okay, we now have a new officers, Jim Snyder-Grant as chair, Fran Arsenault as vice chair, and Dean Charter as clerk. And with that, I will ceremoniously move to my left.
Different from here. And I think that means next time we meet, I'll have my clerk on my left and my vice chair on my right, or there's some tradition here that I think I'm not quite following. Someone know? David knows the tradition, and so does Lisa. Let's go to a neutral third party.
I'll get on the mic because I don't want John to yell at me. Jim, you sit there, and the clerk sits here, the vice chair sits there, and the member sits where David sits.
Got it. Thank you. I guess I have to be the initiator now. Okay, I'm used to being the reactor. You have any advice?
My one piece of advice is, I think the next important piece of business is to go through the list of committee assignments. I think,
Okay, that's the next thing we're going to do. So we all have a piece of paper that has previous assignments. Alyssa, you may or may not have this, or you might have gotten it by mail. Yes, Alyssa?
So I received this from Lisa and printed it up so I would have it handy. But now that I'm looking at it, I have the 2014-2015 assignments. So if Lisa could send me the most recent, that would be helpful. I wouldn't have to recreate the spreadsheet in my notebook.
If you look at the tabs down below, they go by year.
Oh!
I hope that was helpful.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That was super helpful. I'll do that now.
The version that we have here happens to have been the version that we had as of a week ago, but with simply Himage's name removed and Alyssa's name added. So we have tentatively, but with no sense of agreement yet, that you, Alyssa, would simply be taking over Himage's roles, liaison roles. Now, what happens, in fact, is that as we go through these committee assignments, we will find some that other people want to let go of, or that other people want to take on, and you may or may not end up with exactly the ones that your name is next to right now. So I'm going to recommend that we just go through these. Some of these will be very quick, and some of these we'll have some discussion about. And does that seem like the right way to do it? I'm looking for sort of like nods. Okay, on we go. 250 committee, Dean is the liaison. Any comment on that, Dean?
Keep.
Yep. The 53 River Street Master Plan Committee, David, you okay with that one? Okay. And if anyone is eager to jump in and kick anybody out of their current liaison roles, please speak up, because we're going through these kind of quick. Acton Community Housing Corporation.
Keep. Alyssa, do you have any feelings about that?
I am fine with you to keep that. I just might show up to some meetings now and again.
The Acton Concord Emergency Communications Center Board of Directors.
Keep.
The Acton Housing Authority.
Keep.
And here's the complicated Acton Leadership Group discussion, which is right now Dean and David. I don't think there's any way out of my not going to these now. So I think my name goes there. Is it okay for people that David also continues to go to the ALG?
And especially is it okay with Fran?
Yeah.
It's okay with me. Would it be a problem if I also went as well? Would that be a quorum issue?
Yes, but we can post it. If there are meetings that you would like to attend in person, we can just post it. Or what I did sometimes is I just simply attended by Zoom and didn't participate in the meeting. I never raised my hand, I never said anything, and that was also okay.
That sounds good.
Okay, so you got some options. Acton Nursing Service Advisory Committee. This was one that Himaja had. Oh, Alyssa seems to be gone, but no, she's coming back. but we still can't hear you, sadly.
Sorry, I'm just turning my video off when I'm walking back and forth to the printer so I don't make you motion sick.
Mm-hmm.
I am happy to have that.
Thank you. ActonTV.
Keep.
Okay. Acton Water District. This is another one that Himija had. Alyssa, would you be able and willing to take that on?
Yes.
Great. AB Cultural Council. I've been doing that one. I've done so little for them that if anybody was excited about that, I would be happy to let go of it. But if not, I'm happy to continue to do my mediocre job of it. Not hearing anybody? Okay, that's still mine.
Okay, I would be happy to take that on if you could let me know what the regular meeting hours are. I seem to recall they meet during the day.
They've switched meeting times. They were for a while meeting on Monday nights, which was keeping me from going, but now they have various other meetings. And I'm not. See, this is how mediocre a liaison I've been. I'm not aware of exactly when they're meeting.
Okay, I'll take that. And hopefully I'll be able to attend meetings. Hopefully they won't meet when I'm at school.
Yeah. Okay, the School Building Committee.
That one I've been named by the school committee.
Right, so you're committed. The regular school committee.
I'm happy to continue doing that.
Great. The Ag Commission.
So I would be happy to continue with that. However, I am interested in some other positions that normally would go to Alyssa, so I'd like to free up my schedule. So if anybody really wants to get on the Ag Commission in my place, that's fine. If not, I'll stick with it.
Let's come back to that, because it seems like we should talk about those other committees first, and then we'll understand. Board of Appeals. How's that for you, Fran? Okay. Board of Assessors.
Keep.
Board of Health. That would be another one that used to be Images. How about you?
Happy to have that.
Great. Cable Advisory Committee.
Keep.
Cemetery Commission. That's another one that Himija had. How about you, Alyssa?
That's fine.
Great.
For me to keep?
Yes, yes, Cemetery Commission. It's all yours. I'm assigned to the Acton 2020 Comprehensive Community Plan, which really means that I'm sort of waiting in the wings for the next comprehensive community plan to happen, and I'm happy to keep that. Community Preservation Committee.
Keep.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I think both Alyssa and Dean are members of the committee.
Ooh.
That is a problem because none of us can go.
Mm-hmm.
So, and for example, there are cases where all of us might present. I think only one of them should remain on the committee, and that should be the liaison member.
Yes.
And in fact, that's the way the charge for the CPC reads. It has one select board member.
Mm-hmm. What are you thinking, Alyssa?
So my plan was to wait and find out if Dean, find out if Dean wanted to remain the select board member. And once I knew that, I was going to tender my resignation.
Perfect. Thank you. That seems just right.
Yep.
Conservation Commission. Dean.
Keep.
Okay.
All right, I'm happy to do that if that was one of the ones that you wanted.
Yeah, once we see how the rest of them schedule out.
Do you want to come back to that then?
Yeah, let's come back to that.
Okay. Council on Aging.
I'll keep.
Okay. Commission on Disabilities. I'll happily keep that. DPW Facility Study Committee.
Keep.
Design Review Board.
I would keep.
Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Commission.
Happy to keep. Just so everyone knows, I will no longer be a member as of June 30th, right? So I was, in the original charge required a select board member. The charge, as we changed it to a year ago, December, no longer requires a select board member. I've since I'm not an officer anymore in that, in that committee. And then as of June 30th, I'll just be a liaison, non-voting member. Not a voting member. So just
Yeah, so you've gone through this transition from being the chair to being a member, and then this would be a further transition to being just the liaison.
Yes.
Got it. Dog Park Committee.
I'll keep.
Okay. Economic Development Committee.
Keep.
Finance Committee.
I'd like to keep that.
Great. Green Advisory Board. I'll keep that. Health Insurance Trust. Alyssa, how do you feel about the Health Insurance Trust?
Happy to keep that.
Great.
Well, happy to take that.
It's all yours. Historical Commission.
So Alyssa, how do you feel about these? I love the HC and the HDC.
I am here to wait to hear from all of you and those of you who want to stay the liaison for those committees that I'm currently serving on. I'm totally fine with that.
Great. So I'll keep them. If there's any further discussion, we can figure it out.
Great. So that's HC, HDC. Okay. And the next in the H's is also yours, apparently, Human Services Committee?
Yes, I definitely want to keep that.
Okay. Kelly's Corner Steering Committee. You guys actually had a meeting recently, didn't you?
We did, the first time in a year.
Yeah.
But I think we're going to probably accelerate our meetings a bit based on what we heard at town meeting.
Okay.
So I would like to keep that.
Great. Land Stewardship Committee.
Again, that's one that I would be interested in giving up, if anybody would like it, just to free up my schedule a bit.
There's in the past, I've argued for having the same liaison to the Conservation Commission and the Land Stewardship Committee. I don't think that's necessary, but it's a nice to have. But it would mean someone taking on two committees. Does anyone want to take on one or the other?
I would do AdCom before if that's,
Yeah, that's good.
So we're suggesting that jumping back up to Agricultural Commission, we're going to move that to Fran. Okay. But so far, I think you're still stuck with Conservation Commission and Land Stewardship Committee. That's okay.
At this point, yeah.
Okay. We can always come back to them. MAGIC, MAPC, is another HIMAGA item. What say you, Alyssa?
That sounds good.
Great.
So the only thing there is I think they meet at 10 a.m. So I'm pretty sure that's the case. I mean, I used to go to their meetings a long time ago. And they're often not in town. They could be in any of the MAGIC region. So they could be in Concord or, other places. So I just bring that up.
Are they on Wednesdays?
They used to be on Tuesdays, but I don't remember. I actually don't know where they are now. We could find out. So we could also give it to Alyssa, and then if it turns out to be a problem, reassign it at a future meeting.
Yeah, I mean, I could also take it. It would be consistent with being the liaison to the planning board. So we can wait on deciding that until we know more about the schedule. But we've got Alyssa or Jim.
Or I'm happy to do it.
Great. Okay.
You may have more things to do than you used to have to do.
So I've heard. Minuteman Regional School District, happy to stay on that. Open Space Committee.
I'm happy to keep that.
Great. And
then I will resign from Open Space Committee.
Oh, on the same logic.
But There are associate members waiting in the wings.
Great. Thanks for that. Planning Board, I'm happy to keep that. Rec Commission,
I'm happy to keep that.
great. Senior Tax Relief Taxation Aid Committee, that's been assigned to me, but it hasn't been an active committee, but I do keep in touch, with the Finance Department to understand new programs. So you can have this assigned to me, but it's a freebie, so I especially don't mind taking that on. Sidewalk Transportation Advisory Committee, I'm happy to keep that. And same with the Volunteer Coordinating Committee. Water Resources Advisory Committee. Alyssa, that would normally have your name next to it now. Is that okay by you?
Yes, that's fine.
Great. Okay, and now we've got some trustees. We've had the same liaison going to both Acton Memorial Library and West Acton Citizens Library. Is that something that you're interested in, Alyssa?
Yes.
Okay. And I'll also express an interest in this topic as well. I'm not sure I have the capacity to handle it, but I do feel like I've stepped into this topic, and I'm interested in continuing if I can.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
I was actually wondering if Dean might be appropriate here. He was more involved than any other member of the board other than Himija, and is a previous trustee of the Citizens Library.
What say you, Dean?
Yeah, that's kind of the specific ones where I was playing games with some of my other assignments. I really would like to take on that issue with the two libraries. I've got extensive experience with the physical plant of both libraries. And I did serve as a trustee at the West Acton Citizens Library for a couple of years. And frankly, those are the assignments that I would most like to get out of this process. So I'd be, the discussion about land stewardship and conservation commission, those, I'd be happy to give those up so that I could free up my schedule to be able to devote myself to the libraries.
Okay, so we saved the interesting one for last. So at least three of us are interested in doing this. A fourth or fifth person interested, or? Okay, so we'll settle this between the three of us. Yeah. So some thoughts. One of the reasons that I think Alyssa might be suited for this is because you have this experience in doing this community circle work with United Way. So you've worked with groups of people that have had, disagreements, who are learning how to listen to each other. And that feels like a critical next step here, because we've gotten very divided and divisive on this issue. And we need to get back to, just listening and finding ways forward that work for people. Yeah, so that's why I had your name in there. Alyssa.
So thank you for that, Jim. I was actually thinking that I might be best suited for those two boards because I was not involved in the contentious issues leading up to town meeting, and so I would be coming in with without that baggage, so to speak, or past that might impact. I'd be coming in as a new, fresh perspective, and I might be able to hear something different than none of the four of you would be able to hear from everybody involved. And I have enormous respect for the trustees that I do know. I don't know all of them. I've checked out the names of the Memorial Library trustees. But everybody that I do know, I have tremendous respect for, and I was actually looking forward to getting to know them better and attending a trustee meeting for the very first time, because that is one of the few board or committee meetings that I have not yet attended in town. So I guess that's exactly the opposite reason that Dean just mentioned of having familiarity and knowledge of the issues at play.
David?
Yeah, I think we need to be careful not to let the issues that we've had in the past few months with the Citizens Library overwhelm this whole issue, right? The Memorial Library is one of the most popular libraries in the Commonwealth, and doesn't have the operational problems that the temporary citizens trustees introduced. And so I think they're very different, and I would like not to see them be managed with the same, point of view, right? They're completely different situations.
Well, the good news then is that if we have two different positions to fill here, and we have 2 or 3 people interested in filling them, we can't potentially split them. Although from what both of you have said, it could be that it's the Citizens Library that's the most interesting to both of you. Is that fair?
Well, as a former trustee of the West Acton Library, certainly I'm very interested in that library. And I will observe that, that the issues we've had since the summer are sort of an anomaly in all of the experiences that I've had with the West Acton Library. It's not been this situation, and I think it's something that can be worked through, and I think it's here, my history with that library dating back to before we had the present situation, I think will come in handy. I think I can put in some historical perspective on it. Memorial Library, I do have some previous experience there. I was project manager with the expansion of the library and worked very closely with the library trustees at the Acton Memorial Library, some of whom are still there, even though the expansion was 25 or 30 years ago. So I think there's a certain rationale behind having one person serve both boards, but ultimately it's whatever the rest of you folks feel is appropriate.
My first temptation is to insert myself as chair at this point, and I think this conversation about who's the liaison is also wrapped up in a conversation about some of the issues at the West Acton Citizens Library. So I'd like to take more time to figure it out, but in the meantime, I'd like to assign myself as the liaison until we figure it out.
Point of order, Mr. Chair, we've always voted on these. It's never been a chair call. I mean, in many past years, we've just done the thumbs up, thumbs down, quick voting, but it's not been a chair call in the past, and I'm wondering why you're taking this as a chair call now.
I don't have a lot of deep analysis behind that. I do remember the thumbs up and thumbs down. It's a little tricky when we have 3 of us, but if we treat it like the same way we did the officer elections, we can hear from each of us about, who it makes sense to have as the liaison.
So we can always do a runoff.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, the runoff takes another 10 seconds. Right?
Yeah. It's pretty quick. And I see, are you suggesting to make a comment? Okay, why don't you go ahead?
Tara from West Acton, and I just want to make a correction that there are a lot of people that view what happened wasn't what the temporary trustees did, but what they felt they had to do because of an aggression by a small group of people, including those that are trying to be liaison right now. It's my understanding that liaison is chosen by the chair, if we look at the traditions manual. And it's my understanding that the liaison is only supposed to be communicating. This is what the board is doing, and this is what the board is thinking. This is what the board and committee is doing. They're not supposed to get involved in mediating and directing these boards and committees. I prefer Alyssa because of the reasons you stated. I feel like we need a peacemaker at this point, not somebody who's dug themselves into certain positions. outside of Alyssa, I would welcome Jim, because he's a peacemaker too. Thank you.
So what I'm thinking of after that comment is we have the role of sort of the mediator or someone who's trying to bring these boards together, and we also have a liaison role, which has been different in the past. It has been more of a listening and supporting kind of role. So I don't know if any of you have comments about how we resolve those different roles. I'd love to hear from people. Fran.
I don't know if this will help. Can we have two liaisons?
For example, it's tricky, but it's not illegal.
Dean and Alyssa, because they both bring different things to the table.
Other comments?
Refer to Alyssa at this point.
Yep, sorry, thank you. Alyssa.
Thank you. So I know that there was talk, and I don't think that the board discussed it because it was, suggested first at a finance committee meeting, and then I believe it was mentioned at town meeting by a few people. But I don't see the liaison role as an arbitration. I think that what folks were suggesting happen was a third party arbiter who is actually a professional. So that wasn't what I meant. And I certainly didn't mean by my comments to suggest that I would treat these two libraries as the same. I just meant that I'm coming into the board. I've never been to a trustee meeting. I've tried many times and never has lined up with my schedule. So I just mean that I'm coming into this assignment. I would be coming into this assignment with a very fresh perspective on, I would just be there listening and communicating with them and figuring out how the board can best support them. And I think that a lot of times when I hear discussions, when I've heard discussions in the past from the select board before I was a member, it was always very clear to me that things that happened in the past, decisions that were made in the past, would often impact things that were said and decisions that were made in the present. And I don't bring that, and that was the point that I was trying to make. The two libraries are very different libraries. Not only are they different size, but they're different types of libraries. And they have very, very different history aside from recent history. So that was the point that I was trying to make, is just coming in brand new with fresh eyes on this whole situation. And I would take time listening to people. As Jim, you mentioned, the community circles has been pretty valuable in giving me those skills in listening.
Dean.
So, I think I will agree with some of the other comments people have made. Your role, whether it's Alyssa or myself or you, Jim, as a liaison is to, sit on the sidelines, be a conduit to provide information and to a certain extent, to be an advocate for those libraries when you're dealing with the select board and the town manager. Depending upon the physical setup of the meetings I've been to as a liaison, and I'm sure you folks have experienced the same thing. Sometimes as a liaison, you get to sit at the table, and sometimes you sit at the kids' table in the back. It all really depends upon the chair of those meetings, and how much you're going to participate. I don't think it's appropriate for a liaison to insert themselves into the discussion, but to serve as a resource, a conduit, and an advocate. So that's, the role that I would take, whether I'm a liaison to either of the libraries, both of the libraries, or a co-liaison with Alyssa.
Thanks. So what I'm left with is we need a further conversation, separate from who's the liaison, about how to proceed to support the communication between the trustees and the staff and the board. So there's, the question of, is there a mediator? Is there a mediation process? What does that look like? I think that's an important agenda item that we can take up at a really soon meeting. But in the meantime, let's figure out who the liaisons are. So the suggestion is that we go around, we hear from people about their, let's see, are we going to hear about order of choices? Are we going to try to do, no, ranked choice voting doesn't make sense when there's only 5 people voting. So we're just going to hear from people about their preferences, about who's the Memorial Library trustee and who is the Citizens Library trustee. So we'll do those one at a time. So for the Memorial Library, hey, we have a clerk now. Could you call the roll and find out from people who their preference is for Memorial Library trustee?
I will do that.
Thank you.
For the position of Memorial Library Trustee Liaison, Fran?
Pick a name.
Pick a name. Okay, so I would love to see Dean and Alyssa kind of do both, if that's possible.
Okay, thanks.
David?
Dean.
Alyssa?
I think it would be helpful in terms of the role of liaison to advocate for boards with the select board and the town manager for one person. So I would say as my first choice, I'm going to rank choice vote anyway, Jim. For my first choice, I would say me for both boards. And for my second choice, I would say myself for Citizens and Dean for Memorial.
Okay. So, Jim?
This is from the Memorial Library?
Yep.
Alyssa?
Okay.
But yeah, if we end up finding a conclusion about both people, that's fine with me too, but that would be my first choice, would be Alyssa.
And
what say you?
Okay. Memorial Library, I would be happy to take that as liaison. I would prefer to be involved with both. But certainly AML is something I'd be interested in.
And how do you?
Can I say one more thing?
Please.
That I really like working with Dean, so there's that. If we each manage one or both manage both, I think that we've had a very good working relationship on the boards and committees we've served on together for the last few years.
David.
So I think it's a little impractical to have 2 liaisons, but I think one each might make sense, right? And maybe what Alyssa suggested, and I think Dean indicated he'd be okay with that. So maybe that solution. I would not like to support 2 liaisons for a single board.
Yeah, okay, so I'm hearing this emerging story about one of you being assigned to Citizens, the other assigned to Memorial, but that you are in touch with each other and communicating and, helping to create bridges, or at least communications channels. So now the question is, let's hear, yes, John has a thought too, perhaps?
I certainly don't have a opinion on who should do it. I just have a concern about communications. And if the chair to be kept abreast of communications that we're having between the 2 liaisons, that's too many people to be involved in the situation. So again, it's certainly something we can work through, but it's hard enough to coordinate and communicate, and I think that would make the job more challenging for the chair, and for the staff, and maybe for the liaisons as well.
Hey, I recognize you.
You couldn't stay away.
Would you like to say something? Could you remind us who you are and stuff like that?
I can say my address now. Hi, I'm Himaja, former select board member and liaison to both of the libraries. I'm from 65 Main Street. Yes, wanted to quickly note that I think that it is beneficial to have one person liaison for both libraries, because there is benefit to knowing what's going on at the different libraries, and especially as operations are becoming more streamlined between them, having one person who can kind of fill in any gaps in communication and kind of know what's going on at both of those libraries is kind of helpful. And also to the town manager's point, it is because of OML, it is difficult because you can only reach out to one other select board member on any type of issues. And so I would recommend having one, but I think that if you did decide to move forward with having two separate select board members, that they do work closely together. But yeah, that was just the 2 cents that I wanted to add. Thank you.
I'm persuaded. I don't know if others are, but well, Alyssa has raised her hand.
I just wanted to say that it's wild because I was thinking about saying I wish we could ask Himaja. I had no idea that she was in the room. So thank you for being there, and thank you for giving us your opinion, Himaja.
So that would suggest having, setting aside this voting process for a while and just have a simple vote on who is the single liaison to both the Citizens and the Memorial Library, and just hear names. I would withdraw my name from that particular vote. If that fits the mood of the board, let's just have a straight old hearing from everybody on who's the liaison to both libraries. And then at a future meeting, we'll continue discussion about how do we do, whatever mediation looks like. Can you call the roll again?
David.
Dean.
Fran.
Come back to me. This is a tough one. I would choose Alyssa.
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 Jim?
Yeah, in the spirit of bringing new people into leadership, I would also choose Alyssa.
And I would vote for Dean, so it's a 3-2.
Great. Thanks, everybody, for wrestling with that one. Are there other boards and committees that are not on the list that we still need to have liaisons for? No? Good.
So do we still have open space?
Oh, yeah. No, open space is staying with David.
And I was wondering whether we concluded on Conservation Commission and Ag Commission.
Yeah, I think we did. I think Ag Commission is going to Fran, and Dean was trying to let go of Conservation and Land Stewards in order to become the liaison to the libraries. So it seems like you would then, for now, be stuck with, or continue with, serving with the Conservation Commission and the Land Stewardship Committee. Is that fit your thinking?
That would be my thinking. Of the two, if somebody was interested, just due to some conflicts on my own schedule, I'd be happy to give up the land stewardship. But that's only if somebody's interested in picking that up.
When do they meet, Dean?
I believe they're usually frequently meet, I believe, Tuesday nights, but I'd want to check that.
Yeah, it's definitely evening meetings. You're asking as if you're exploring the notion of taking on the Land Stewardship Committee.
Yeah, wondering if it's a possibility for me, although I don't have a handle on when all of these other folks meet yet. Because the website is not always up to date.
John?
I'm happy to do my best to address the times of meetings, if that's helpful to you. I believe the HIT meets in the mornings. I think it's on Thursday mornings, if I recall. I don't have,
Sorry, say that one more time. HIT meets when?
I believe it's Thursday mornings.
Okay.
And land stewardship is in the evenings. Is there another one that you had a question about?
Library trustees?
Well, that's changed a lot in the last few months, so it would
Yeah.
depend on what the Citizens Libraries trustees want to do going forward. But over the last 6 months, they were both meeting on the same evening, and it was a Thursday. But over the last month, that changed, and with the new trustees that were just elected, that will probably have to be determined.
And I think RAC is on Wednesday evening, is that?
I think that's a Thursday also, but it's definitely, yeah, it's a midweek in the evening.
If it's,
Fran is also, I think, offering to do the Land Stewardship Committee, if that makes your Wednesdays and Thursdays be less than double booked.
I'll have to
Okay.
I'll have to do the I'll figure it out.
Okay.
I would actually be really interested, Fran, in AgCom, if you wanted to swap out AgCom for land stewardship.
So I actually was really wanting AgCom.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
I just want to note with that movement, I think that Dean has 10, I have 8, Alyssa has 9, Jim has 9, and Fran has 12.
Whoa.
I have 10 because I added Cultural Council. So I'm happy to take land stewardship, and I'll just figure out when I can go to meetings. If I can't go, I can look at recordings.
So what I heard was, Alyssa, you're willing to take the Land Stewardship Committee? Okay,
Yep.
great. It's very clear, all these markings, but we should probably get a, revised one with actually what we all decided together. Would that work for you, Lisa? Okay, great. So next week, we'll see a final version. And if there's any more questions, we can keep talking about them. But I think we've got a liaison assignment settled. Thank you, everybody. The next item, number 7, is called Board Public Communication Policy Discussion. I've heard a little bit about this because Dean and I talked about this at the last agenda meeting, but I would love Dean to describe this item.
So it sounds much more impressive than it is. The way it started out when John Benson was chair, and then I inherited it after David. Basically, when a member of the public sends an email to the entire select board, we need to have one person that responds back just to note that they've received that piece of information, not engage in a dialogue, but at least let the person who sent the email know that it's been received. And it really needs to, really need to have just one person responding to all of these things so that we don't accidentally have a sequential communication. So that today I've spent a great deal of time sitting on the couch on my iPad thanking people for their comments, which we got like 40 of them today, I think. So it's not a glamorous job.
So I think you're proposing that I continue to be the chair that does this?
Yes.
Yes. So emails that came in after about 8 p.m. would be mine, and anything that came in before then would be yours? Or tell me the time that you stopped working on it so I know where to pick up.
So Yeah, I stopped responding about 4 o'clock today.
I can take that. Are there any other comments or questions about this policy? David?
So I think there have been times forever where the chair may assign, or you can request from the chair to respond to people, especially when they have questions.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like, for example, since I was the board member assigned to Discovery Way, when questions came in, other than just opinion, I didn't respond to the opinion ones, but I responded to the question ones.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's made on a case-by-case or a topic stream-by-topic stream arrangement with the chair.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm happy to hear input from, if a board member sees an email that they really, really want to respond to, let me know right away, and I'll happily let you do that. In a lot of cases, I think, though, there'll be very quick little responses that I can churn out. We'll be discussing this at this future meeting. Thank you for your comments. Yeah, here's how to learn more. Any other board comments before we hear from the public about this policy? Okay.
Thank you for recognizing me. And as somebody who writes often, a lot of times for other people who don't want to get their names known and all this stuff, if the chair or whoever writes back can say this issue might be helpful for you to talk to the liaison, or to give us a place to go, as would be really helpful. Thank you.
Thanks. The other piece of this that I would bring back to a future meeting is to discuss how we want to track these, if it's any way that would want to be public. That's something I'd like to talk about, but I think that would also require close coordination with town staff before I'd propose something like that, because I don't want to add an extra burden onto them. But it's something I'm curious to explore is, we get to see all these messages, and typically the public doesn't unless they're a matter of, for a particular hearing, and then they go in the hearing packet. So something to explore for later. But in any case, as of 4 o'clock, I'm happy to take on answering millions of questions. And I'll be in touch with John about splitting the work of, it seems like there's some technical questions that it's better addressed by staff. How did you guys figure that out? How did you guys split up the, which are John questions and which are chair questions?
You'll find that the town manager has you on speed dial.
Is that consistent with your reality, John?
Yeah, I always defer to the chair, but if there's something that I think needs attention, I will reach out to you and mention that.
Okie dokie. We'll be in touch. Okay, that's that item. Next item, determine time, date, and venue for select board goal setting, including time for online public advance input. We started talking about this at the last agenda setting meeting, so I have some preliminary ideas to put forward to the board about this. That would be that we have our public input for goals at our next May meeting, which is in 2 weeks, which would be the 22nd, if I'm doing the math right. So that's one part of what I would consider. The next thing is we talked about, I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting the notion of having a review of the town meeting first. I don't know if that fits into that May 22nd meeting or whether we put it off to the first meeting in June. So I'm still, then that makes me unclear about whether our goal setting would be either at the first meeting of June or the second meeting of June. So happy to have any thoughts about those topics.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
So the goal-setting meeting, traditionally we have it, or in many occasions we had it as a separate additional meeting because it does get very involved. So I think Now, if you're thinking of a June discussion on this, we probably need to have a third meeting in June.
Mm-hmm. As
And-
previously said, I'm very open to having extra meetings, so it's great to be reminded that we have that option and that it's been a tradition in the past. Other thoughts about the timing of all this? Okay, then I would, oh, John, you had a thought?
I have,
Alyssa, too. Yes, Alyssa.
I have a question. Are we taking comment from the public only via email, or will we have a listening session as has taken place?
Yeah, so both. The notion of having a May 22nd item on the agenda is to hear from people.
Okay.
But often
Not for
people,
the board to discuss.
no, just to get all that input, to get the ideas that people have. But then we're always open for business by email, that people would continue to send us ideas up until the time that we actually set the goals.
Right.
The only other piece of this that has me a little confused is that we have a lot of plans, you know, the capital plan, the old 2020 plan, the housing production plan, et cetera, and some of those have laid out, you know, specific and ambitious goals. And sometimes in the past, we've had a habit of, you know, picking and choosing some of that stuff. But it's been rather haphazard, I think. It's like it's up to some particular board member to decide to, slog through the plans again to pick out the things that seem urgent. And I don't know if people have thoughts about whether there's a helpful, more structured way of doing that, whether it would be, to hear from staff who were responsible for those plans or to hear from the committee members that were responsible for those plans. And whether that just becomes part of the regular input process or whether we need a separate bit of education and persuasion about that. So any thoughts on that? I noticed someone from the public approaching who might have thoughts about that.
Thank you for being inclusive. So nothing against John and staff, but I feel like they have the stage and resources in the budget process to examine goals for specifically under staff priorities. And I feel like the goals have always been focused on the public's goals for the select board to engage in. Thank you. We also don't get to speak at the actual meeting. I feel like we have to be really careful. I mean, when John came up here to turn off the mic, I was like, oh, that's really awesome. He's going to speak at the mic so as to equalize, town staff with the members of the public. And I thought that was a really nice gesture, but then he was just turning it off. But it made me think about the idea of equalizing. And it's never in the history that I've been watching this, which has been a while, has the town manager submitted a list of goals to then effectively advocate, lobby, whatever, for those goals, as if to say, well, the budget meetings weren't enough. I'm going to try and do, have all the select board goals be my goals too, or staff's goals. And I feel like that isn't what it was meant to be way back when we started the goals. I also would like to make a pitch for the goals not to be limited to 10. Maybe groups of goals, land use goals, financial goals, human resource goals, as opposed to trying to get everything into 10 and having it all fall out, that a lot of things don't get on. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. There might be thoughts and responses. Oh, you're saying Alyssa has her hand up. Is that what you're saying? Okay. Hi, Alyssa.
Hi there. Thank you. So I had a thought on how I would approach it that I would like to share with you now, because we're having this discussion. I was going to very carefully review the last 5 years of select board short-term and long-term goals that are available on the select board page so that I have an understanding of potential multiple year projects that staff are already in the middle of working on, so as not to bring something to them that would cause them to rearrange those previously established priorities. And I was also going to dig into our planning documents. Obviously, we are getting ready to redo our master plan, and we're in the middle of our open space and recreation plan, but our housing production plan is winding down in the last year and a half before it's going to need to be updated. And our climate action plan we just implemented last year. So I was planning to do that when I'm working on formulating my goals, and I would just suggest that we all do that so we're cognizant of what staff already has on their plate and what previous select boards maybe had set as priorities and are in process or maybe didn't even get started on. Just be aware of all of that when we, as well as the input from the public, because obviously the public's priorities change as new people come into town.
Thanks. Among the things I'm taking from your comments are the notion of coming up with a recommended reading list for us. And I'm happy to work on that, happy to if people have suggestions about what's in there, I would send them to the town manager, so we're avoiding OML issues, but I'll get together with the town manager and, create a, recommended reading list, which would be, the current approved plans we're working from and, the previous goals like you're suggesting. These are all really important things to review before we discuss goals. Other thoughts about the goal-setting process? Dean?
Well, I think we have to recognize that, there's a huge amount of work that's already been lined out for the town staff and the town manager. So I think we need to be very judicious when we come up with new goals. So that speaks directly to the idea about keeping it to a limited number of goals. In the past we've had 10, and I don't, as hard as he works, I don't think the town manager can make huge progress on 10 of those things. So if we do come up with a list of new goals, not things that have already been decided upon, it should be a very short and concise list. And I think a lot of the goals that we should probably consider would be some of the feedback. We've had a number of citizens petitions that were passed at town meeting, and whether that was a good idea or a bad idea and the way it was done, I think those are certainly ones that should be put into the mix. So I do think it's a worthwhile process, but we do certainly, I'll second what Alyssa has said about going back and looking at the goals we've had in the past, and have we made any progress on them, or has the geography changed so that some of these things just aren't practical or relevant anymore. But I do think it's I envision this as a 3-hour meeting with the board members and with no public input, because we already will have received the public input. I think it's important that the 5 of us get together and and hammer these things out so that we understand it.
David?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think the power of this process is the fact that we all come at this from a different point of view. I don't think that we all necessarily have to act in lockstep to do this, right? I've actually been very pleased that at the end of each year that I've been in, or the end of the time I've been involved in this process, that the set of the goals are things that I don't think any of us would have predicted or could have predicted, exactly what the mix would be. And it was a very interesting set of goals. And, I think there's, power in that, making the different points of view come together in one goal list. So I also think it's very important that the board get
time to work. You know, it's pretty rare that we get time to work and not be interrupted in each step. So I think I think that the venue for this meeting being different and everything has been beneficial in the past.
Thank you. I also had some thoughts about town manager participation that I wanted to get your reactions to and John's reactions to. That is that one of the things we discovered is that there are some things that we think of as goals that John's already committed to because they're part of his plan or they're part of his goals, or it's already clear that it's going to happen. So I definitely want to be able to have input from the town manager as we go through this to understand if some of these things are already committed, so that we don't have to, use up a goal for that. I think it's also good for us to understand from John about the scope of effort, and to clarify that we're saying these goals in a way that is actually comprehensible to him, especially for the goals that are, a bunch of our goals are things that we hand over to the staff. Some of the goals are things we hold on to ourselves, but the things that we're handing over to John and his staff, I want to verify that, they actually make sense to John, so that we have them worded clearly. The question, but then there's this, so that's two clear roles for the town manager to say about whether there's goals that are already decided or already baked in, or whether and the level of work. But then the question is what's the importance or the helpfulness of having, suggested goals from staff bubble up to us? And I'm going back and forth on that. I don't really know how to think about that. So I would love the board's thoughts before we design, a goal-setting process, so we understand whether that's part of the process or not. Dave?
I just asked for the clarity of what you said at the end.
Yes.
What are you saying should be part of the process or not?
Do we want to hear from John about recommended goals? Do we want, because sometimes in the last year, the staff had gotten together, had proposed some ideas, and we heard about them. And I don't know if that's something we want to have done or not. It might be helpful, it might not be. So I guess that's my question for the board. And for John, too, is whether if that's something that you're interested in doing, something you're definitely not interested in doing, et cetera. So whoever's got thoughts on this, I'd like to hear. David?
So I think that John should be a full participant in the discussion, but in general, I think the goals are from us to staff, right? So, I think John needs to be there does what we're talking about here make sense? And so he can say, well, whatever he wants to say, right? That would be an awkward goal, or that, that he's not likely to be able to do it well, or maybe he would be able to do it really well, and or whatever comments he wants to make about it. But I think in general, the process should be for us asking the town manager and town staff what we would like them to do.
Thanks. I'm seeing some nods on that. John, do you have any reaction to this topic?
Thank you for asking. So, we have an organization filled with highly trained professionals that are subject matter experts in their area of expertise, and they're involved in efforts both locally, regionally, and nationally to understand the latest trends and best practices in operating their individual operations, and also how it impacts the communities as a whole. I think that if staff were asked for ideas, they would generate some really interesting and good ones. But I also think that we're here and we take our policy direction from the board. So I really would leave it up to you. We're happy to do either.
What that suggests to me, based on what I've heard from the board already, is that if there are, things that want to come forward, they could come forward in that same, public input part. That if you or a particular department wants to come and say, hey, consider this goal for this reason. We can listen to it on the 22nd, just as we are listening to all the other goals. And then in June, when we're having our special meeting, it's on goals. We've already heard all that stuff. So it's clear that it's just us working on the goals. I'm seeing some nods here, nods there. John saying no, too soon.
So just a question on that. Generally, I try to not have each department head provide direct input to the board, because that gets confusing for me. So that's where I saw my role in the past, or theoretically my role could be to engage with staff to understand what those ideas are and then bring them to you in one piece.
Yeah.
But we also could sit and patiently wait for what we're asked to do, and love doing that. So it was really up to the board.
Okay. David?
Yeah, I just want to say, I'm not sure that it's a good way in that public input session to get suggestions from staff. And I also didn't want to say that I didn't want to get things from the town manager for us to consider in that list. I think that's a good idea. But I think in the actual discussion, the discussion is among us, except if we have, questions for the manager. That's what I meant in that. But I think beforehand, if there are things that the manager wants to suggest to one of us or all of us, I think that's great. I don't think he needs to go to the microphone to do that.
Well, I think there is value in having it be part of the public record so people understand, how we end up with the goals that we're ending up with.
Yeah, but he's not a member of the public, right? So I think that's not right.
Okay. Well, then it could be a memo which becomes a public record, which goes in our packet.
That's fine.
Okay. So John, what I'm here this emerging idea is that it might potentially be helpful to have a memo from you that would be a public memo about suggestions for goals, but that would be done in advance of our goal setting session and wouldn't be a part of it. I'm seeing some nods about that. Okay, great. Thank you, John. And we have some more public input.
Thank you for recognizing me. I think I might have a way to kind of reconcile the things that I've heard, as well as with what I've been kind of advocating for, that if the town manager could prioritize so that he's offering 4 or 5 as opposed to 10 or 15 or 20 that might sway the whole 10 being the town managers, that might be helpful. Also, for what Dean said about staff being overwhelmed, and perhaps with it, by offering 100 things, you don't get anything done. So I thought it was really helpful to find out what staff is already working on, separate from what they think should be a goal or want to be a goal, as a separate item. Because I was going to suggest, which is where to get to the meat of my comment, is that if you separate out the goals so that you have 3 or 5 that you're going to drive home to town meeting, and then other things would be like studies or progressing things, because I say that because you can't have too many out of the 10 that are going to be driving it home to town meeting, right? But you don't want to have all 10 just doing studies. So if you could think about that in terms of having a good mix of, a healthy mix of, getting to town meeting, it can be a really big thing on a zoning change or a rehab trust or whatever it is. You don't want 10 of those. So understanding what's already in process is good, but also kind of try and separate out, because we ended up with the short term, this is a year, and then the longer term progress, make progress on a bunch of other stuff, to see if you can have a healthy mix of those types of things. Thank you.
Thank you. I feel like I have enough information from the board to design agendas that relate to these items. But I'm happy to hear any last comments before we move on to the next agenda item. No? Okay. Yeah.
Date and time, so we can start scheduling these things.
Okay. So we have May 22nd as the public input session. We have June 8th as the time that we would discuss. Is 8th the first June meeting? 5th, okay. I don't know why. No, I was thinking that's the wrong month. Okay, June 5th. One of the things will be on that agenda will be the discussion of town meeting. Then we need to invent a time for our special goal-setting meeting sometime after that. I would suggest mid-June or later, so somewhere in the last 2 weeks of June. Do we have particular, let's hear from people about their general schedules. Are there particular evenings that are available, or daytimes, or what works for people? Dean?
So I will be not available in person or on Zoom from the 18th until the 25th of June.
Okay. Before that or after that, are there particular
Before that or
evenings?
after that, everything else is subject to discussion.
Okay, great. Fran, what's working for you? Are there particular evenings that are particularly good or bad, or?
I'm very flexible.
Okay. David?
I was just, is this awkward to do here? Maybe we could just ask Lisa to find a time to schedule a meeting.
I'm fine with that too. Or something.
Which she's done numerous times in the past, right? And I don't know if I have any patterns, but I have particular days that I'm busy, right? So, I mean, we could do this here. I just think it's awkward. I think it's easier to do in other forums.
If people are willing to wait for the process to unroll by email, that does make efficient use of our time, given the hour. So, yes. John, is it okay with you if your staff people work on picking us a time and a date to have this goal-setting meeting?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. That's what we'll do. We're pretty close. I might note that Monday nights are often available if they're not regular meetings, so not regular select board meetings. So it could be that an off Monday would become an on Monday, just as an opening thought. But we'll see how that works. Thank you. Authorize town manager to enter agreement with ActonTV to share services related to digital media content production. John, talk us through this one.
Thank you. So as I mentioned, we have been working through some staffing transitions, and we really rely on a team approach to using multimedia to get our information out. As has been noted recently, sometimes the website that we operate is a little bit overwhelming. Even though all the information is there, it's not as easy to find as we'd want it to be. So one way to get people the information they need is through social media. And we're just looking for more resources to implement our social media content programs. So I've been in conversations with ActonTV, who we provide all of our PEG revenues to operate the local cable station and all the things that they do there. And they have capacity, if we're interested, in providing us with a day, a week worth of content production, which is really the challenge. Every department has things. Can you get this out on social media for us? And then it's like, all right, well, who's going to create it and what's it going to look like? And in the past, we've had different people step up to do that. And we're at a point right now where I think this proposal is not meant to be a permanent solution, but it's a good stopgap for, I think, a way to address a short-term need. And so this proposal would be a situation where we'd pay ActonTV to utilize one of their staff members an hourly rate, and they'd be able to use their equipment, but they'd be working here or on behalf of here, whereas on a normal day, they work generally on behalf of the community. That's the proposal. There is a draft MOU in the packet, which isn't necessarily exactly what we would do unless you loved it, and then we would. But if there's any issues on that, that can certainly be updated or changed. And there's also the idea that we actually amend the existing MOU that we already have with ActonTV, which is a 10-year agreement, which sounds more complicated just when I say that, but that is the other option available to us. So that's the proposal. It's to get us short-term assistance with content production to help get the word out on all the things that we're doing.
Any comments or questions before we move to a motion? Alyssa?
So there was nothing in the MOU that made me understand that it was a temporary agreement because there's no end date or number of years. Is there a necessity to stipulate that? Like this is a 1-year agreement, a 2-year agreement? Or would you just end it when there was reorganization and no longer a need for somebody outside of town hall to do this?
John?
I think having a timeline in there is a good suggestion. But to answer your question, that is how I had envisioned it, is that we would use it for as long as we needed it.
Okay.
David?
So I just wanted to understand, maybe by example, what they'd be doing. Would they be, for example, producing videos to highlight a new program we had in town or a project that's going on, that kind of thing?
Yeah, yes, I can give you a very specific example. So last week we had town meeting, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago. It's all blurry. But there is a need for us to get information about what happened last night, what's happening tonight, and do it in a way that can grab people and so they see what's going on. That's something that I did myself, which I'm not as good at as other people, and it's probably more effective to have someone else do it and have it done in advance and have it be lined up and ready to go. So that's a clear example. But generally, I made a couple announcements tonight about the new signs on the Freeman Trail. We put out some new signs today on Kelly's Corner. Those are all things that we want people to know about, and we don't want them to have to dig through the Municipal Monthly to find these things out. And one way to get these 25 pages of the Municipal Monthly out in little pieces and tidbits to people that'll actually see them is through social media, because you can really target your messaging, and we just don't have the capacity without this extra resource. And again, my goal would be to have someone do that full-time, but we're just not there yet with all the transitions going on, and I see this as a way to address that in the short term.
Fran?
I love this idea. I think there is a need for this. There's still, even though from where we sit, we may hear something 100 times, but there's still folks in the community that are, when did this happen? I haven't heard about this. And I always find that so incredible, because again, we hear things over and over. So any way to get things posted on social media, and this is even helping ActonTV, which I'm all for this.
Any additional comments? Okay, would someone like to move that we authorize the town manager to enter an agreement with ActonTV to share services related to digital media content production?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any more discussion? Let's see, to agree, we have to do this by roll call. Can you call us through that?
Alyssa?
Yes. Aye.
David?
Aye.
Fran?
Aye.
Jim?
Yes.
Dean? Aye.
Great, that's unanimous. We're doing that. The next thing is the consent items, I think. So as I recall this ritual, I read through them relatively quickly, and if people can say hold, and we'll discuss those separately. Number 10, approve meeting minutes, April 20, May 1st, and May 2nd, 2023. Approve and designate town manager to sign proclamation for Building Safety Month. Approve letter of support for Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness MVP Plan update, building Acton's climate resilience. Approve Farmers Market Winery license application for 1634 Meadery for the 2023 Acton Boxborough Farmers Market, Elm Street. Appoint Patricia Clifford as an associate member of the Planning Board with a term to end June 30th, 2028. Thanks for hanging in there, Patricia. 15, accept donations for the 2023 Summer Concert Series and special events from Acton Urgent Care for $300, Dennison Automotive for $3,000, Powder Mill Animal Hospital for $500, Rotary Club of Acton Boxborough for $1,000. 16, accept donation for the Acton Pride Festival from Acton Congregational Church for $500. Accept donation from Patriot Electric for $400 to be used at the discretion of the Acton Fire Chief for the benefit of the Acton Fire Department. Approve a one-day alcoholic beverage license Boston Area Gleaners, 91 Martin Street, June 24th, 2023. Paranjali Nag, Nara Park Patio Tent, June 4th, 2023. And League of Women Voters, Acton Area, Nara Bathhouse Pavilion, June 8th. Hearing no holds, how about a motion to approve consent items 10 through 18?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Dean has moved and David has seconded. Let's call that roll.
Alyssa?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Fran?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
And Dean says aye.
Who would like to make the last motion of the evening? Alyssa, it would be traditional for the new person to make the last motion.
Sounds good. I move to adjourn.
Second.
Let's check it out.
Hey. Alyssa?
Aye.
David? Aye. Fran?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Dean? Aye.
Okay, we did it.